Good evening. Welcome to the July 22nd Village Board meeting. This meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, thank you. That was a little different start to our meetings, and thank you, Trustee Fraioli, for making the suggestion. And this is our first time in a virtual session beginning with the Pledge of Allegiance. And thank you, Deputy Mayor Levin, for leading us in the pledge. Alrighty, let's begin with any trustee announcements or remarks. Usually it's Trustee Lopez who raises his hand first, but he's not with us quite yet. So does anybody else have any comments to get us started with?
Are you going to be discussing yesterday afternoon's event of the?
Well, actually, our first item on the agenda is a special presentation.
Okay.
Which is why Dana's here, and I trust that.
Got it. Okay.
That, Joyce will be joining us soon. So.
Okay, so I just want to say that it was really enjoyable. Took it towards Circle and the work that our staff has done in really fixing that whole area. It turned from being a project of just making the streets safer to also including what you will be hearing, as you just heard, from our newly appointed, or soon to be appointed, I guess, village historian. So I'm looking forward to that. I wanted to mention to everybody that it's getting hotter and hotter, and I know it's getting more challenging to wear masks at all times. Been walking around a lot in the village. I'm just hoping that people understand that where wearing of the masks is not observed, there's definitely been a spike in the coronavirus. And as we all know, as we think about how we reopen schools and how we go out in public more and more while the weather is still nice, it's even more imperative to really be very watchful about yourself and your family and thoughtful about really managing this pandemic by wearing something as simple as a face shield, a mask, whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to encourage people, and if you can, when you visit an establishment and nicely say to people, could you please wear a mask without starting a fist fight, but in the nicest way possible. I think this really is a community effort and a personal effort all rolled up into one. So just encouraging folks to keep that in mind as it does become more challenging with the hot weather. Thank you. That's it for me.
Trustee Lopez, you usually kick us off. You weren't here quite at the moment that we started. Would you like to make any comments or remarks tonight?
Yes. Sorry I'm late. Bedtime and all that. My daughter's bedtime is exactly this time, so I went a little long tonight. But I'm really excited for what's coming up with our village historians. But first I want to actually talk about the comprehensive plan. So we had our comprehensive plan steering committee meeting last night. Those happen monthly. Last night's focus was looking back at the chapter that we have just completed. BFJ planning drafted a chapter on the waterfront. And that was based on the conversation that we had the month prior and all of the research that they had done based on previous resources that were available. So we talked about that in detail. And we also talked about ways that we're engaging the community. So we have the ideas wall, which is one way. And if you just have 5 minutes, anywhere from 2 to 5 minutes, the ideas wall is a great way for you to engage with the comprehensive plan, to put an idea out there. You don't have to have a plan for it. You don't have to have a way of paying for it. You just have to put the idea out there. We just want your ideas. If you have 15 minutes, we would love for you to fill out the survey. That's also on the comprehensive plan website, austintomorrow.com. You can check that out and fill out the survey. And so that 15 minutes gives us more quantitative information about how the community is feeling. So we can say 56% of people are interested in increasing this, 37% are interested in decreasing that, whatever it is. Because as we start to get creative with how we're imagining and reimagining auctioning, getting community input is absolutely critical. The third part of the conversation was all about downtown and economic development. And so we looked at what are the different parts of our downtown, from downtown Austining, Arcadia, Roosevelt Square, all of the different parts of our village. What are the places where there's some opportunity to take advantage, whether it's village-owned properties, whether it's properties that are underdeveloped. How can we increase business? And because the comprehensive plan is so integrated and interdisciplinary, we also got into conversations about traffic. And so we're actually going to be talking about transportation in later meetings, but absolutely critical that we think about, for example, Route 9 and Croton Avenue as a key way that we're connecting downtown to our upper downtown, our kind of Croton Avenue, uptown businesses. So a lot of really great conversation. It is available on YouTube, so you can watch it in its entirety. Usually we go from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., but we went till a little bit past 10 because the conversation was just so rich, and we still had so much to discuss. So a lot of really exciting things happening there. Up next, after the downtown development chapter now is going to get written, one of the things that we want to do is take a look at what are the ways in which the kind of data that we have coming out with the Cornell Adaptive Design Studio recommendations, all the recommendations that we're seeing, how can we start to now really integrate these kinds of pieces of data into the chapters that have been written, and how can we engage the Spanish-speaking community? Porque mi gente, nosotros no estamos viendo suficientes voces de nuestra comunidad que está en el plan integral. Lo tenemos que ver. So we need to have more Spanish-speaking voices within the comprehensive plan, and we're pushing for that as much as possible. That's number one. Number two, the census. We are at 59.9% on the census, so close to 60%, and just shy of getting to where we were 10 years ago in the mid-60s. We want to blow right past that. Some key things that I want the community to know in terms of how we are engaging the community. So the county has come out with some commercials in both English and in Spanish. I'm going to be having those throughout the week on my Facebook page, and we'll be sharing them far and wide. We have Facebook Live with County Executive George Latimer and Commissioner Norma Drummond talking about what are ways that we are starting to think about the census and how we can really engage with it. And in just a little over 2 weeks, we're going to have the numerators. These are folks whose job it is to knock on your door and ask questions about the census and that are going to be coming. So a couple of important things with that. If your home is counted through a numerator, an enumerator, someone who is responsible for getting that information from your household, it actually does not count toward that percentage that we give the updates toward. Those are all self-reported. And so your information will still count 100%, but it's just not part of how we track what percentage of our village has completed the census, which I think is an interesting detail. And number two, once people know, to spread the word that these folks are going to be knocking on your door, and the way that you could avoid someone knocking on your door is by filling out the census. We're hoping that that also increases the response rate as well. So that's it for me.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much, Trustee Lopez. Anything from Trustees Fraioli or Quesada this evening?
Just something real quick, I guess. Sorry, Bob. Just want to thank Assistant Buildings Manager Maddie Cesad in regards to what a great job she did in putting this RFP together for a waterfront and getting the ice cream Bigfoot. I know a lot of folks already had enjoyed that, but we actually this weekend, the mayor and myself were there doing a ribbon cutting event, and it was really busy. We actually had to wait a few extra minutes because it was all the people that were actually there and the people that were waiting online after that to actually get ice cream. So a big shout out for Maddie and all the work that she did, and obviously just go down to the waterfront, enjoy the weather, enjoy the view, and definitely enjoy ice cream. So yeah, that's all I have. And obviously everything that Omar said in regards to the census and what happened last night on the on the committee for the comp plan itself, it was definitely something that I think everybody in the village should be involved and get involved, because that's going to be the blueprint, sort of a master plan to what we look like in for the next 10 years at least. So please get involved in that. Take the survey, get the census done, and let's make Austin a place to enjoy ourselves and for the rest of our, for a very long time, I should say. So yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Trustee Fritchie, did you have anything else to add before I give my remarks and we move on with our exciting agenda?
No, I'm good. Everybody pretty much hit everything that I had on my list, so I'm good.
Okay. Well, there are a few things that I wanted to update folks on and comment on. Tomorrow, Thursday, July 23rd, from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m., there is an opportunity for folks to get help. If you have been financially impacted from the coronavirus pandemic, go ahead, head over to CAP, which is located in what we think of as the Washington School, if you've been in Austin for a few years, up on Croton Avenue. And they are partnering with the Bridge Fund, and there are opportunities for folks to get emergency assistance for, if you've been impacted by COVID, for groceries, medication, utilities, childcare, rent. So there are a lot of opportunities to help families that are struggling financially right now. And so I encourage anybody who is interested in learning more and applying for these benefits to go to CAP tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. I believe that they are hoping to be outdoors for the application process, if at all possible, but it'll obviously be weather dependent. It is a fairly large building, so I'm sure that just wear your masks as you do in every other circumstance where we go these days. Speaking of wearing your mask and keeping a distance and washing your hands and avoiding non-essential travel, we are holding steady in the single digits of active cases of folks with COVID in the village of Austin, which is very, very good news. I still have conversations with folks who talk about our overall number of people who have tested positive in the village of Ossining, and it still looks like such a big, scary number. The only communities with a larger overall number are some of the big cities. But I have to remind folks that there's a reason for that. We did a lot of testing very early, and that's a good thing. So people were identified early on, and they were given great medical support and advice so that they could do their best not to spread the virus. And now we're seeing the benefit of having so much helpful medical support in our community, particularly through the Open Door, as other communities are struggling to get their active cases down to the single digit level as we have, and they are seeing more and more cases. So we're very fortunate in Ossining that folks are increasingly taking it seriously. I'm actually for the first time getting some positive feedback from folks in the community saying that they're seeing more people wearing their masks and keeping their distance, and that's great news. And I also want to thank our friends in town government and Chief Sylvester, who are taking a very thoughtful look at how to maintain some of the parks that have been getting much more use than usual, particularly Lewis Engle Park and Cedar Lane Park, because so folks are just gathering outside more and more. And so figuring out how to keep those looking terrific and welcoming for folks, and making sure that everybody there is abiding by all of these rules that we have on the books regularly as a municipal government, but then now particularly with the state regulations. Thank you very much to the chief and to the town supervisor for really stepping up their attention to these areas where we've been seeing some concerns. And if you're on Facebook, you can check out the video that Chief Sylvester did. He took a nice long walk up and down Lewis Engle Park and gave folks a lot more insight into what the enforcement is going to look like and what the expected behavior is going to be at Lewis Engle Park going forward. I guess I will just close with a moment. I'd like to take a moment of silence in honor of Councilman Jeffrey Harder. He served 6 terms as a town council member, which are 4-year terms, keep in mind. So that's a very long time that he dedicated himself to our community as a local elected official. He was also very active in the community and beloved for his kindness and his generosity, both in Ossining and through his work in higher education with Pace University. And his spirit lives on here in Ossining and in the lives of so many alumni from Pace throughout the region. So if we could all just take a moment of silence before we move on with our agenda for the evening. All right, thank you very much. With that, Madam Manager, I generally throw it over to you at this point, but the first item is something that I have a lot to say about. So is there anything you wanted to tell us about before we get the agenda underway?
Take it away.
All righty. So we have special guests here today, and Deputy Mayor Levin was referencing last night's program down at Dewars Circle. And actually the appointment was official yesterday. I officially announced the appointment of our new village historian, Joyce Rockhole. So welcome, Joyce. Officially, it's now been announced in our village board meeting. We are so, so excited to have you taking on this role. It's going to be a fresh perspective on Ossining history from you. You're born and raised here in Ossining. You're already involved in so many opportunities for helping people understand their history in our community. And I know Trustee Levin and I have both had conversations with you pretty in depth about some of your ideas for how you will serve as village historian. And I just want to point out to everyone that I am done at the end of this year. The village historian position is generally appointed at the beginning of the year, and I have been so, so fortunate to have, we've all been fortunate to have Dana White serving for the entire time that I have been mayor. But she came to me and said, you know, I've kind of focused on running for trustee, which is what Dana White is up to these days, and she's running unopposed. So we're super confident that she's going to be a village trustee next year. And she and I had already spoken with Joyce Rockhole about some of the terrific work that she's done. We've seen her present. She's presented at village board meetings. She's presented at community programs. And so we've had an opportunity to get a taste of Joyce and her approach and her thoughtfulness. And and she also serves on our Village Historic Preservation Commission. So we know that she cares deeply about our community and has such a thoughtful perspective. We're really, really excited to have her on board. And so in a moment, I want to switch gears and do a thank you look back at the fabulous work of Dana White. But let's start with the big news of the week, which is we have a new village historian, Joyce Rockhole. And Joyce, do you want to say something? And then I know that my colleagues on the board would like to chime in and say wonderful things about you as well.
I would. Thank you very much, Mayor Gearity, for this opportunity, and good evening, everyone. I'm really excited. I love the town, the village that I live in. I've been here all my life, and my family's been here for over 100 years. And I care deeply about our history and sharing our history. I really think, and I honestly believe that history is very healing for people. It builds connection. It gives you a sense of belonging and connecting to where you live and the people that live around you. And I think we're at a time now where we need some healing, and we need to understand each other a little more, and we need to understand where we came from to kind of understand where we're at and how we use that to heal from where we are now and to fix it. It's just, I really honestly believe that it's a healing thing, and I'm just very happy to be a part of it and to research and share my research with other people so they can feel the same thing I do about where we live and the people that we live among.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask Rika Levin first. I know you commented on yesterday's lovely, lovely program, which really focused on Reverend Dewars. But Trustee Levin, I should also point out, is also running for office. And as I step back from being mayor, Rika is running unopposed to be the next mayor. And so I did not make this appointment in a vacuum. It was as a result of a number of conversations, both with Dana, with Joyce, and with Rika. And so I really, I'm grateful that I think everybody on the board is really excited about this appointment, but since it's a mayoral appointment, and I very strongly anticipate that Rika will be the next person with that title. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to do anything that she couldn't also wholeheartedly support. So Rika, do you want any, not to put words in your mouth, Rika, so let's hear it from your mouth. What do you want to say?
Alrighty, well, I could just say, okay, that was it. A lot of the same words I was going to use. I'm really pleased with this. I thoroughly have, throughout my tenure as a trustee, Dana White was the historian. I have learned so much about this community, and Joyce and I got a chance. I've seen Joyce present at a different function. She also has presented at the school. I learned a lot of the area of North Carolina, where many I don't know the percentage, and I'm sure I'll learn about this more, but a large part of the African American community and the start of Star of Bethlehem in our community, which is over 125 years old, really comes from a very specific place in North Carolina. And these are the kind of things that I think make a community, learning pieces of history that you otherwise would have never learned. Many people move to a community, they really are moving for all sorts of reasons, jobs, family, investing in a house, commuting distance, relationships, whatever, 100 reasons. Everybody has their reason. And not always for a community. Some of them come, live 2 years, 3 years, and move on. But really, I think about what makes a community. It's people and their relationship to one another. And as Joyce so eloquently said, and we had a lovely conversation that was supposed to be half an hour. We both apparently like to speak and talk a lot. So it ended up being an hour and a half, as you would expect, overlooking right in our village in one of the parks where I believe I learned that her daughter, is that right? Your daughter got married there. We learned so much just from that interaction. And that is what I think history is. I think history isn't just what's in books, and it's not just professors at universities, you know, preaching about it and trying to get kids excited about it. No, it's about the fabric of a community, small community, a nation, the world, it doesn't matter. It's all about the interrelationship and the fabric of its people. And I'm just thrilled that Joyce on it. I am sorry to see Dana go, but since Dana will most likely be a trustee, I know that there's a really very nice transition happening here, which will be a great benefit to this community. It is my opinion that the more you can transition in all sorts of positions in government, the smoother the transition, but actually the more fruitful it is for the community at large. So I'm very excited that I heard Dana whisper to you, Joyce, that she will continue being a fan of yours and continue work. So I think that will be advantageous to all of us. Welcome aboard. And I think you have big shoes to fill, but I'm getting a real sense that you're not going to have a problem filling it. I'm very excited. And I thank you for accepting the appointment from the mayor and for taking the time to meet with me.
Thank you.
Before I gush about the tremendous service of our outgoing historian, would my colleagues like to comment on either the program yesterday or on Joyce's appointment? Or you can start chiming in about Dana too if anybody wants.
Well, I didn't make the appointment the program yesterday. Sorry, I missed it. Dana, thank you so much for what you have done as our historian. Joyce, looking forward to definitely having a conversation with you. I think you and me are both lifelong residents here. So I'm sure we have plenty to talk about. We could reminisce about a lot of things that's going on through this village. So congratulations on your appointment. Looking forward to working with you. And Dana, thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Omar. I go last.
Está bien, sin problema. I'll start with Dana, our outgoing historian. Dana, thank you so much for what you have done. When I was first researching Ossining, I like everybody my age, went to YouTube and I typed in Ossining, and this video popped up, and it was a video that you created about Ossining, and it gave me this really interesting, helpful context about the history of Ossining. And if you type in any other municipality, it's not like these videos are just commonplace. It's something that was intentionally done. And through your slideshows, you really were able to capture elements of our history, whether it was Sparta, whether it was the kind of migrations that we've had here in the village. I really have appreciated the life that you have brought history and the engagement that you have created. So thank you, and my sincere hope is that things all go well, as I'm sure they will, and I can call you colleague here on the board. So thank you very much for your service. Joyce, I'm so grateful for you stepping up and stepping in to this position for a variety of reasons. Now in 2020, one of the things that is missing, more than anything, arguably, is context. There are so many things that are happening, and a lot of them without context can be distorted. And so it's by adding the context that you really start to understand how things got to be the way that they are and how we may be able to move forward. And the way that you added context to Doer Circle, the way that you added context to the people's lives through your work in genealogy, the way that you are really adding a sense of history by your own family history, being a historian here, is truly a gift. I was really amazed by the photo that was taken yesterday, that our mayor, our deputy mayor, our outgoing historian, and our incoming historian are all women. And that kind of powerful female energy is something that is not lost upon me. And as someone with a daughter, I would love raising my daughter in a community where there's so many women in influence and power that are able to demonstrate what women can do. And I'd also like to add that from an identity perspective, I'm so grateful that the kids that are going to grow up in Ossining can also see different kinds of representation in different levels. And so seeing a Black historian, a strong Black woman serving as historian, and being able to say, this is my community, it has been for over a century, to me, it's just an incredible gift that you are giving the community simply by being you, and your bona fides, they speak for themselves. Your reputation precedes you. What you've been able to do, even up to this point, without even having been historian, has been a huge gift to the village. And I look forward to all the different ways that you're going to be engaging, starting with living history, capturing what coronavirus is doing to our community and the ways in which we're navigating it. And so if you have a piece of history that you are living, if you have a laundry list, if you have a poem, if you have any kind of artifact that is reflecting your feelings about coronavirus, Joyce, you've already invited folks to start sending that in. And so I'm really excited to have that as well. So thank you.
Trustee Quesada.
Thank you. Thanks, Omar. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there yesterday as well. I had a couple of this stuff going on and my family around here. But before I continue and talk about the historians, I want to thank Paul Fraioli and obviously our police department for all the work as well that they did on that intersection. It wasn't definitely the history of that and the safety portions of those. I want to thank the police department, Chief Sylvester and Paul Fraioli, and their involvement in that. It made Dana several years ago, and I was able to be the liaison for the HBC, and as Dana serves those last few months as a member of the HBC, she has brought a lot of value and a lot of intel to that board. I know Joyce is a new member of the HPC as well, so I'm looking forward to hopefully be working with you as the liaison goes on, maybe. But one of the things that that I want to actually, Joyce, I'm going to put you in a spot for a little bit. Is a project that I had Dan and I kind of started working a few months back. I want to say a few months back.
But yeah.
It's been a little while. I think that, as you say, as Omar says, sometimes context and history are hand to hand. And I think one of the projects that we started, and that was in 2000, let's put a few months back, it's actually Spring Street. I think Spring Street has a lot of history within itself. And that's a project that Dan and I kind of took, and we have the basis, I believe. So I'm going to put you in the spot, and I said I would love to work with you on this project, and and take it to the next level. So I'm looking forward to probably sit down with you. And I promise you, it's not going to be an hour and a half. It's probably going to be more like 2 hours to 3 hours at that point. But, you know, it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. You know, we do this because we love our community. We do this because we care about where we are and where we want to go. And I'm looking forward to working with you and to get your input on a lot of things of history as well, which is the basic of our foundation. I think on not just in Austin, I think it's in general, like, you know, like Rika said, that's, you know, to me is like learning history is essential to see where we're going and you know. But thank you for all the stuff that you guys have done. Dana, thank you so much for everything that you have done, not just as a historian, but also as a member of the HPC. So looking forward to working with you, Joyce.
I accept. I'll see you on that.
Awesome.
So listening to you, Manny, just made me realize for the first time, probably, at least in my history of awareness, you're going to have 40% of the village board is going to be made up of former HPC members. I wonder how that dynamic will play out in decision making for the village board in the future. That'll be interesting to watch, and I will be watching. But I did want to comment a little bit more on yesterday's program, which has been referenced a number of times at this meeting. It was a really lovely program, and there are a lot of people to thank. And I did it on social media, but that's not the same thing. So I want to say thank you to the Parks Department for putting together the program yesterday, for the Public Works Department for doing all of the safety upgrades, and for the Police Department for working with the DPW about and figuring out where are the safest places to put the stop signs. There's actually 2 stop signs that have been added to that intersection. To the Village Management Department, who coordinated the whole thing, and actually it was up to Karen to make the stop signs actually functional so that now the police can write tickets. And thank you also to our Director of Planning, who very soon after he came on was consulting as part of figuring out that whole process. And if anybody can think of who I left out, just chime in, and I thank them too. I did also want to comment on the attendance. We were a little bit torn because we had 2 goals with yesterday's program. One of them was to let everybody know, hey, there's stop signs here now that you need to stop, and you're going to get ticketed if you don't. And also it's a lot safer, so pedestrians can feel safer and drivers can feel safer. But because this was Doers Circle, it was a real opportunity to learn more about Reverend Doers. And also I want to thank, I think it was Public Works that did so much of the preparation of the space to restore the plaque that was put there not so long ago. It was named many years ago, but now that the plaque is there, and doing repairs to the stone wall that goes around and really cleaning up the whole space. And it looks great. And so maintaining it and even continuing to improve it going forward. I heard somebody was saying something about maybe some flowers. Did I hear that? Yeah, okay, Joyce, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I did hear that you were thinking somebody might want to make it even more inviting and special. And so thank you to everybody for taking that on. And our hope had been that we would do the presentation with a Facebook Live event so that everyone could see it, and then we kind of had some technical difficulties. So that didn't work out. Although we are, I guess, trying to put together the video from the event as well as we can. But all along, the great news is that Joyce always had a plan to take her presentation, just a part of it about Henry Doers, not about the stop signs and the crosswalks, which are important, but not the bigger long story, and produce a small video for everyone that tells this wonderful story of Reverend Doers and his experience born into slavery and running away and joining the Union Army and coming to the village of Sing Sing as a Civil War veteran and founding Star Bethlehem Church. It's just such a compelling story about one of the founders of our community and who we are today. And so I'm so excited for her to be able to tell that story more broadly. And I know Joyce has some additional material or photos or documents that she's gonna be able to weave into this story and produce something for us to have and for people to see going forward. And can I also say the conversation that you and Jaime had yesterday, or am I putting everybody on the spot? I'm putting everybody on the spot. So, which was Jamie Hoffman has done such tremendous work in maintaining and expanding and updating our website to make it not just user-friendly, but to be so much more valuable and have valuable material on it. And Joyce is excited to work with Jamie on creating a page about Ossining history. And this will be her first project to include, but I know that you're also planning to share some of the tremendous work that your predecessor has done, because Dana has done slideshows for so very, very many, to tell so many stories about Ossining's history. Obviously, the movie we referenced was the one that was the most produced documentary, but Dana has told so many stories. Spring Street is one that's been in the works for a while, but there are many, many, many that have been shared in so many different venues, and to give them a place to live on the website, I'm just so excited about that. And we can put that on the list of really great things you're gonna do in this position. And now we're holding you to it. We said it publicly, so you gotta follow through on it. You're good? You're ready for that?
Okay with it.
Great. Okay, so Dana, I am so, so, so grateful to you for your service as our village historian. And I wanna hear some of your thoughts, both about Joyce and about your own experience, but I do want to start this part of our discussion by reading to you a proclamation from the board and I, just sort of that you'll get to put up in your house, because that's what everybody wants, right? Is to have a proclamation in their house. But sort of just to mark this major, major transition and this tremendous historian that you have been as you've reinvented this position for our community. So I'm gonna read, I'll skip the first whereas because it doesn't really say anything, but after that, whereas Dana White has served as village historian since January 2015, and as such, she helps to preserve and share the great history of our beautiful community. We are grateful for her inspiring work uncovering local history and bringing it to life. And whereas Dana's work as a journalist has been an asset in her investigations and her storytelling approach to highlighting the individuals and community events that are Ossining's history. She has inspired audiences large and small through her slide presentations on topics that include the Sing Sing prison, local legends, and the rich cultures that make Ossining who we are today. Among her many projects is Historic Downtown Ossining, the short film she produced about the impact of urban renewal had and continues to have on our downtown. Visitors to our waterfront are treated to inspiring photographs and history lessons about Ossining's life as a Hudson River community through plaques that historian White helped create at Henry Gordine Park. And whereas Dana also serves on the village's Historic Preservation Commission, where her contributions are vital in keeping the architectural character and charm of our historic village, Ms. White is also a trustee of the Ossining Historical Society Museum, where she has dedicated countless hours to exploring Ossining's past through a treasure trove of photographs and documents. Throughout her tenure as historian, Dana has advised the village board on the history of the people, structures, and decisions that have shaped our community today and influenced who we will be tomorrow. This evening, Dana White is recognized for her dedicated service as village historian, and we thank Dana for her unwavering commitment to our community as she looks to continue her devotion to Ossining in a new capacity. Now, therefore, I, Victoria Gearity, Mayor of the Village of Ossining, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, do hereby congratulate Dana White and proclaim Thursday, July 23rd, 2020, as Dana White Day in the Village of Ossining, and urge all our residents and merchants to join us in honoring her. So. You got a day, Dana. It only took 5.5+ years. You earned a day of all of your own.
All about, actually, getting my own day. That's why I did all this. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. Do you want me to give my remarks now?
I would love to hear anything you have to say, Dana. This is your platform.
Well, first, the shoes are not that big to fill. I only wear a size 8, Joyce, and quite average. You're gonna be fine. They're not that big. The Spring Street project, you know, I actually have been working on it, Manny. I have found a plethora of photos on the Westchester County Historical Society website that show a lot of the structures from the past when they looked very different and before they were torn down. So I've actually made headway, but I am pleased to work with you and Joyce on it. I don't want you to just kick me off the stage here, okay? I've already been working on that, so. But it's gonna happen and it's gonna be cool.
Thank you.
I don't like unfinished business. So we'll make sure we finish it. And it's gonna be, we gotta think of a cool way to present it. That's the thing, is how is it gonna be? I mean, I have some ideas, but they might be a little ambitious, but we'll figure it out. I was gonna dip into my massive budget as village historian to pay, no, I'm kidding. But it'll happen. So I did write some remarks here, some of, and I think I want to begin by thanking Mayor Gearity for giving me the opportunity to be village historian 5.5 years ago. It truly changed my life, and you don't get those opportunities very often. So I will always be grateful for that. In my 5.5 years in the position, I've done presentations for groups large and small on topics ranging from the waterfront to the Leatherman to Sparta Cemetery to Croton Avenue and beyond. I could not have done it without the Ossining Historical Society, and I would like to thank the museum for being so generous with their archives. I am probably most proud of highlighting the effect that the, in quotes, urban renewal movement, though we missed out on the renewal part for the most part, which happened in the 1970s, had on our downtown and continues to kind of, if not haunt us, and present a challenge to how we restore what we lost. And the short film Historic Downtown Ossining has been viewed more than 11,000 times on YouTube in about 4 years. And that project, in fact, got its start as one of my first slideshows, my famous slideshows. Although they're more high-tech than slideshows. That makes it sound very 1950s. I actually have a laptop and Keynote that I use, so. And a little projector. And I am very fond of the waterfront history panels at Henry Gordine Park. You know, they were a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. You know, in my previous life as a magazine editor, my job was to shape and package content. So this was basically another way to do that. So it was really fun, and I really enjoy that sort of thing. And I really like it now because you can get ice cream at the kiosk and read them while you eat your ice cream. I'm a fan of the carrot cake. And I have also spent a lot of time thinking about Sing Sing Prison, or correctional facility as we call it now, which has really had an outsized effect on the village for 200 years. And it has shaped our growth, especially in the 19th century. It has shaped our image in the world. It has even given us our village name because, of course, as you know, the name was changed from Sing Sing to Ossing in 1901 to differentiate ourselves from the prison. I really liked making history fun again with trivia nights and interactive presentations about our ever-changing landscape. I learned a tremendous amount in the process, and now I hope to apply that knowledge to elected office. Indeed, my work as village historian inspired me to take the next step in my public service. While putting together a presentation on women's suffrage and women in elected office last year, I was moved to ask myself, could I muster the courage to do what those women did, even a little? And I decided, yes, I can. I have tried to approach the position of village historian as a unifier. That's why a presentation given this past January at Park School is so important to me. The theme, Unity Through History, was designed to counteract signs of intolerance that had appeared in our village. Working closely with Marcella Levin of Park School, town historian Scott Craven, Joyce Rockhole, and Marcia McNeil, who emigrated from Ecuador in the 1960s, we created a program that focused on the different waves of immigration to Ossining, as well as the Great Migration from the South. Felix Flores contributed his invaluable knowledge, and Ro Moran translated our words directly into Spanish. We focused on the fact that no matter who they are or where they came from, our residents have always come to Ossining for the same reasons. I called these reasons points of unity. They are opportunity, faith, family, and education. And as we spoke that night, I could see the connection in the parents' eyes. They saw that they are part of a continuum. I promise I will bring the same work ethic, the same passion, the same love of our village, and the same sense of curiosity to village trustee as I have to village historian. While the transition to our new village historian would have occurred in early 2021 anyway, handing the torch to Joyce Cole now makes sense. It allows me to focus on my campaign without feeling guilty of shirking my historian duties, and it allows her to get started on her important work. I have long admired Joyce's work with the Little Birdie County Genealogy Society, which she helped to found. As I got to know her better and collaborated with her, I realized she was just the person we need to bring a fresh energy and perspective to local history, one that feels relevant and current. History is happening now, and Joyce is ready. Her researching ability has helped many people learn about their pasts and affirm their identities, and I'm excited to see how she applies this talent to the village at large. Local history must be multidimensional. It must be told from different viewpoints to be truly complete, to be whole. Historical narratives, after all, are framed by those who tell them. As the great Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe put it, until the lions have their own historians, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So I have a few people to thank for their advice, encouragement, and support over the past 5.5 years. Former town historian Martha Masidi has been a great collaborator and fact checker and friend. Together, we worked on the Dale Heritage Trail, which is a series of signs at Dale Cemetery. And it was a lot of work, but as always, it was a great learning experience. I'd like to thank current town historian Scott Craven, with whom I'm only a little bit competitive. No, we're friends. He gives more presentations than I do. He's very good. I'd like to thank Miguel Hernandez. I'd like to thank Deborah Van Steen and William Reynolds. Norm MacDonald, curator and former president of the Ossining Historical Society Museum, has been an early inspiration and a friend and a valued source of information. I'd like to thank New York State Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff, who encouraged my, my research into suffrage. I'd like to thank Adam Markovics, chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'd like to thank my friends Kaya Gam and Ken Skalski. They work in the construction and design business, and they've always been eager to share with me the things they find underground. I'd like to thank Guy Chelly, who literally wrote the book on Sing Sing Prison. Dr. Brent Glass and Jerry Fiella of the Sing Sing Prison Museum Project. Both of them were very supportive in making sure that the history of the prison was front and center early on, and I really appreciate that. Nancy Gold of Historic Hudson River Towns worked with her on the Travel Stories audio tours that you can now access. Karen Smith of the Briarcliff Historical Society invited me to speak there several times. I'd like to thank my pals at the Ossining Historic Cemeteries Conservancy, especially Jane Botticelli, Patty Bassick, and Joyce Markovics. We have a lot of fun thinking about dead people. John Crawford of the Baker Collier Christmas Cheer Fund is a great early proponent of my work. He and Bob Hooley commissioned a history of the Baker Collier Cheer Fund that turned out pretty well. I'd like to thank Ossining Town Board member Liz Feldman, who booked me at the Ossining Boat and Canoe Club when she was Commodore there. I'd like to thank Ferry Sloops that booked me at Shadamuck. I'd like to thank the Sing Sing Kill Brewery, where I did a couple of trivia nights. They were great fun. Just add beer. I'd like to thank Doug Tershin and Rochelle Udell of the Jug Tavern of Sparta, who do an amazing job there. Johnny Girolamo at the Elks Lodge has booked me a couple of times, and I appreciate that. I'd like to thank Kendall Buchanan for sharing the history of Ossining, the history of African-American Ossining. He was invited me to speak at Sankofa a few years ago, and that's where I really started to learn a lot about that slice of our local history. Marcella Levin, who was great to work with at Park School, Jim Trapasso at the Ossining Public Library, was always really helpful, enjoyed booking me for presentations. I gave quite a few there. Village engineer Paul Fraioli has always been really supportive. And I'd like to thank my husband David and my sons Eli and Jesse, Mayor Gearity, and the current Board of Trustees. Thank you all very much for your support. And I would like to thank the many residents of the village of Ossining who took the time to share their stories and memories with me. You have been my lions. So thanks, guys, and thanks for the day.
Dana, thank you for sharing that. Wow, Joyce, I hope you got that list of all of those resources that you can now draw on.
We'll be on Dana's porch in the morning.
Wonderful. Oh, that was really, really beautiful. And you just reminded me of so many of the things that I was aware of, and that there's always so much more that you've been doing all this in these years that I haven't even been aware of. Really just such a tremendous contribution to our community. Thank you, Dana. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It was the greatest honor of my life, really. So thank you.
That was my son who knows Dana and gives you a thumbs up. All right. I think we can say thank you very much to our historians, our very recent past and our very newly appointed historians. Thank you so much for sharing all of your tremendous dedication and your thoughts on where we've been and where we're going. And I'm really excited to have both of you serving our community going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Manager, I think it's time to move on, in which case I am recusing myself from this latest update. So I'm going to disappear and freshen my drink and just watch for a while.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you on behalf of the staff to Dana White, our village historian, who's done a tremendous job. I am sure I speak for the entire staff that we are indebted to you for bringing residents to Ossining history and to the work that we do every day as staff for the village of Ossining. And I also want to congratulate Joyce on her appointment as village historian. We are so grateful to have you on board and really look forward to working with you as well. So thank you for that. I would like to introduce Bill Balter as our next guest. As you know, the village has signed an agreement with Balter to be the preferred developer for the DPW site down on Water Street. And we signed that agreement. It was executed at the end of June, and the clock is now ticking on our 180 days of engagement and opportunity to bring this project, get community input, make this project a reality, firm up the plans. So with that, I would like to hand this over to Bill so he can talk about where we're at in the beginning of this process. And thank you, Bill, for joining us this evening.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Good. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on tonight. So I just wanted to begin sort of where we left off, which was at the last Zoom meeting that I was at, where the board authorized us entering into this 180th day period. A couple of things were asked, one of which was specifically that we design a sign that we would put on the property, and that sign that we designed come back to the board to look at. So I wanted to go over a few things tonight, but one of the things specifically I was hoping we could do is just take a look at that sign. The idea that was raised at your last meeting that I attended was that we do a sign both in English and a sign in Spanish. We thought it would make sense to put the sign on Water Street, sort of the Spanish sign and the English sign on either side of the gate exiting, entering the property from Water Street, so that people see it clearly from Water Street. So I don't know, Karen, do you want to just start there? Unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Of course, Jaime. Yes.
That's not the sign.
But that is Dewar Circle under construction. So just so you know, it's in some context. But yeah, Jaime, if you need me to send it to you again, let me know.
I also have it queued up.
Or you can let Jaime share. So
It'll be up in a second. There you go. Can you see it?
no,
Oh,
we're still on Dewar Circle.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Do you have it now?
Yeah, I think it just I'm only seeing partially on the screen, so I don't know if everybody can see the whole sign. I think it may need to be reduced a little bit.
There you go.
Oh my goodness.
Whoops.
Sorry about that. Let's try that again. Yep.
Okay. So the idea of the sign was to try to give enough information that people understand what's coming before the village, and to really encourage people to be curious and to get in touch with the village or go on a website, which is at the very bottom. That's a website we'll create, that as we have information, we'll keep adding information to that website. There'll be places for people to ask questions or give comments. And the idea of the two images that you see on the left, it's a combination of the existing conditions plus an overview of sort of contextually what we're doing and what surrounds us. On the top right, that image is the RFP, our RFQ response, the image from Water Street. What you're looking at is the building before we've made any changes as a result of some things I'll talk about later tonight or in a few minutes. We are working to refine the plan a little bit. But before we get to that, I just wanted to talk about the sign. So basically the goal here was to try to make it clear that this is not a quote unquote done deal, that this is a public-private partnership between us and the village. We're seeking input from people, and this is sort of a process that we want people's input on. So let me just stop talking and sort of see if people have comments about this.
Thank you so much, Bill. How granular of feedback should we be giving here?
Well, for me, from my perspective, I think this is, there's nothing perfect, but I think it has to have a certain minimum amount of things on it. We try to do less words because the sign's going to be 4 foot by 8 foot sign, and seen from a little bit of a distance, the words, if there are more words, it'll be hard to read. So we try to keep the words to a minimum. But I mean, any comments you have, I think what I'm trying to do is sort of get to a place where we can consolidate comments so that we can sort of get this done, because I think it's important, since we have a very limited period of time, 180 days, and the clock is ticking, to get input. I think it's important we get the signs up as soon as we can. Okay, helpful. I'll give my feedback and take it or leave it as helpful as it is or not. Okay. Proposed mixed use housing development. Mixed use is about the housing, so I think there should be a dash between those. Okay. Same with on the remediation. Same with village owned. That the property is village owned. There should be a dash between village and owned. Okay.
In terms of larger design feedback, I would eliminate the top clip art. I don't think that that adds a lot of value or clarity to the sign.
Okay.
I would make the image of what the proposed development about 50% larger, and I would make the map about 50% smaller. If the idea is that you're walking or driving by and you see the image of like what this could be, and then you want to get more information, then you can step closer to it and you see this map. But the map is, I think, too detailed to as you're just kind of strolling by, be able to see, like, you will stop and look closer. So I think having it smaller, you won't lose too much value or information.
Okay.
But really the idea is like the vision. And I don't know if there's a graphic designer that could take a quick look at it to give their thoughts in terms of just like visual clarity. But I would love to, we have a lot of folks with skills to have somebody with skills, because you could have, for example, the proposed mixed-use housing development take up like as much room as is there all the way to the top, and have the Wilder Balter Partners and Village of Ossining be small all the way at the bottom. Because I don't, there's not a lot of confusion about like where this is happening necessarily. I think it's important to have that on there, but like what this is much more value. So having that be like super big letters and have the attribution and like credit to be much smaller at the bottom, I think would make a lot of sense. So I think those are some pieces to start with. Or sorry, just one last thing. In terms of reducing language, please provide your input to the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees. Send correspondence to. I think you just can cut the send correspondence to. I think you have the same idea if you just add the colon after Board of Trustees, and I think people will get the point.
Okay. I think that's actually all of your input. I think is good. I like all of it. One of the things we left the village logo on the sign, which we talked about, I think, in one of our informal phone calls we had a couple of weeks ago. How do we feel about that, using that logo?
I think it's fine. It's all over the village. It's on village vehicles. I think people recognize it. I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
I think you just leave it on there.
Okay.
But I would just have both that logo and your logo much smaller and at the bottom.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Thanks.
Was that it, Omar?
Yes.
Okay, great. I don't know where plan at Village of Ossining goes to and who gets that. But the trustees are bot@villageofossining.org. That's our actual group email.
Did you say that again?
Rika, we actually did it so that we would get it, and then we'd be able to consolidate everything so that you guys didn't get flooded. So it'll go to one email, then we can give you like a report on the feedback more collectively. So that was the intent.
Oh, that's fine. So it's
Yeah.
I get that. So it's being read by staff. I would prefer to actually get the volume and not have it. I would prefer to actually see it. And if it does become overwhelming, as you expect it to, I think we'll reach out and say, you know what, the volume is too great for us. But my initial reaction is to hear directly, unfiltered directly. And then if you're right and we're getting hundreds and it's overwhelming and we can't really do much, we'll change it back to that.
Yeah,
So
Rika.
hold on to plan.
The only thing that I would say is BOT goes to the entire board and you have a board member who's recused.
Rika, yesterday this was a part of the discussion in our little meeting, and I get it. I get what you're saying, but I think you misunderstood filtered. It's just we want them to take whatever we get, and if it's once a week, so we don't get hammered every day, and once a week we can look at these emails as a group, so to speak, or we can look at them and say, and have a discussion and decide what we want to do with them instead of everybody individually getting them. I just thought it would be easier for us to deal with it that way, and have a staff member just take them all, put them all in a file, whatever they want to do it, and then boom, send them out to the four of us, and then we look through it and we can have a phone call. We can, if there's a hot topic, we could speak on it. you know, I just thought it'd be easier on us as far as the amount of emails we would get.
Yeah, but then they're not actually sending it to the Board of Trustees, are they?
Well,
well,
because
you
we
would
have a
get it
member-
regardless.
We would get it, but we would get
Right.
it in a package, in other words. And
No, I understand. I understand the efficiency of that. I think it's a really great idea. It's unfortunate that somebody, not unfortunate they recuse themselves. When I see stuff that says that something is going to me, it's sort of like, it's the intention of our group email that people believe that they're sending it to us. There are times where they may have actually say something that they feel is being sent to us. If it's not actually being sent to us, then it either should be sent to us directly, or it shouldn't say that it's going to the Board of Trustees directly. When you give somebody an email and it says REC 11, the expectation is that they're sending it to REC 11, and that's the way I would look at it. There's nothing wrong about what's being done here, but I do believe that there are times where people send things to BOT and sometimes talk about staff. If they knew it was being sent to staff, it would be more transparent. If they don't know it's being sent to staff, then it's not transparent. It's not so obvious. It says, please provide your input to the Village of Ossining Board of Trustees.
So
that's what it says.
what if we just said, please provide your input, send correspondence to those two things, and if we don't have.
You could just say to village management or something, or
Yeah.
I totally understand what was done here and the good intentions that it was done with. It's.
Well, I think we can clarify that pretty easily, and it would take.
Okay.
I'm
take
gonna
words away.
throw a dart here. Is it possible that an email address could be set up for just the four of us?
Yes.
Yeah, of course
Yes.
it is.
I mean, you could have plan go to the four of you. That's the other thing too. Like the plan could just go to the four of you.
That would be helpful.
I do think it's important though that, you know, people are sending information in that's going to be relevant to staff and board. And, you know, I think staff should, you know, I don't want to make this so confusing that because we all should be getting the same information to be able to have the input, because the input all has to be really the person who needs to get the input is Wilder Balter. So I don't want to create something where we are creating barriers to getting input that the developer needs. So
all you would have to do, so you would take out the word, as Omar had suggested. You're saving a line by taking out send correspondence to. You just after the word, the village, Ossining Board of Trustees, put in a / village management, and then it's just understood by the person who's ever sending it. That's where it's going.
Then that's fine, and then we'll add. So we could put whoever we want under plan. We'll figure that out.
Right. Whatever group goes on there. I would suggest, just from the graphic point of view, that map, to Omar's point, I mean, you're seeing this sign, I believe, only if you're physically driving by there or walking by there. So it's pretty obvious that's the whole point of the sign. The URL actually size-wise should be larger, because if you're driving at 25, 30 miles an hour and you need to get a quick look, that should be the thing that sticks out as the call to action, which I think is great. I would love to see something that says the word rendering in a shadow across. Oftentimes people look at this and it always ends up in the media as if this is done. This is what we're reviewing, is this exact model, but we're not actually. We're actually asking for input about what should go into it and all of that. So if there could be the word rendering somewhere, so it's not implied that this is a done deal, as we heard from the beginning of the presentation. It is actually the intent that this not be presented as a done deal, but rather this is purposefully to get input from the community, if I heard that statement correctly. And to Omar's point, yeah, the map is, you know, you're standing there, you know where it is. You don't really need the map to understand. I would think that it might get too cluttered, but there were, if I remember the presentation, there were two angles of draw. There were many. One was from this angle, and the other one was sort of from another angle, looking the other way, which was sort of a cool angle too. So that might be helpful for people to see how it goes into a gradation. But I'm only suggesting it only to the extent that it may get to be too cluttered. even though 4x8 is a heck of a large size for a sign.
That'll get
If
lost
it's
on the
too
screen.
cluttered, you're defeating the purpose too. So that's just my 2 cents worth, literally 2 cents worth.
To your point,
I just want to respond to one thing. I think we thought a lot about the map. I think that what this is not aimed to be is just a development with housing on it. It's taking a contaminated site that's village-owned, that's underutilized. It's in a very important location and redeveloping it. The rendering doesn't do that by itself. The reason we have the map is so that people understand all of the various elements of this. So we thought it was important to have the map. So Rika, I wasn't sure if you're saying.
I got it. No, I understand now.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. That is a very important point. Thank you.
You're welcome. But the other comments I think make a lot of sense. I think what we'll probably do is, we have had a graphic designer work on this, by the way, but we'll take the input and do it again. Well, are there any other comments that anyone else has about this?
I just would add, as you're thinking about adding and taking away different elements, one piece that could be helpful, that is a relatively small addition, but could be helpful is a QR code. So someone could take out, because if someone takes a photo of this, if there's a QR code, then it could just take them right to the website. And that would be like a easy addition that would make it so that you don't have to have the URL super big, just have the QR code and then it will go straight there.
Okay.
All right, so I go last, I guess. Thank you. This actually was my suggestion for this particular project, so I'm thankful for you guys working on this. Couple quick things, I guess, more like in a graphic and an architectural point of view on my end. You know, if you are going to keep, we are keeping the logo, the Indian logo in there. I don't know if it's the presentation itself, but it seems like that's a PDF, and also the format that was sent to us is a little skewed. So please make sure that it doesn't look skewed the way it looks right now.
I can send him another image.
Well, you can modify it, and because I got it in PowerPoint, so it seems like you can just modify that and scale it to the appropriate ratio on that. Couple things like Rika mentioned in this particular rendering. Usually in something like this, you put proposed rendering or proposed project to visualize that is actually a proposed, is not, you know, like she mentioned, that it was actually something that was built. Something on the map, and I think that's a minor stuff, and I'm not sure how and I think it's a simple fix, if anything, will be where you have the description of the project itself and what we are looking for, but in the map itself you have proposed residential building, but the building itself is not just residential. We also looking for a community space, you know, and some sort of retail. So I'm not sure. Me personally, I would take the residential portion of that out, and I should just say proposed building or proposed project.
Okay, got it.
You know what? Besides that, you know, I agree with all the points that were made from the rest of my colleagues, and obviously I had the same concern in regards to the email portion, but I think we got that resolved. So, you know, you know, the input of this to me is as well essential. I want to hear from the community, you know, and any other project that I've been part of it, we usually we encourage people to send us emails as even if it's from 1 to 100 to 1,000. You know, we are elected by the people, and we do represent the people, and this is a public lot that we're trying to. So I want to hear every single comment that goes, every single concern that they may have on this particular item, on this particular site itself. So I'm in favor of actually seeing the unfiltered portion of this, all the emails, all the comments that they have or they may have.
Are there any other comments on it?
Sorry, one quick thing. So you're gonna have a Spanish and English. Is this gonna be? Are you thinking about doing double-sided, or just one-sided sign, you know, posted on the site itself?
I think our intention is to make 2 signs, because if it's double-sided, it'll be less visible from one direction than the other. Yeah, I think two different signs on either side of the entry gate is what we're thinking.
All right, no problem. Thank you.
Let me ask the group the following. This sign is obviously close, but needs some work. Is there one member of your board who we might work with to get it to a final place so we don't have to come back to the full board, so that we can get it produced and on the site? And maybe that person can run it by each of you however you want them to?
I can do that. Is Omar. I can do that.
Okay, is that okay with everyone?
Well, hold on, Omar. I think we have sort of like a subcommittee for this. So it's between you and Bob, correct? So my suggestion will be to be both of you guys to review this and get the feedback if that's the direction we want to go.
Yeah, I guess my point is, do we need to come back to the full board is really more of a question. Do we need to come back to your full board?
My sense is that we could probably hammer this out over email.
Okay.
That's my sense. So that you take this feedback, incorporate it. We, between me, you, and Bob, we can give you the feedback, and we can. There's only 4 of us, and I don't know. My sense is that we don't have to do this during a meeting again. We can do it over email, but
Yes, I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Then the other things I wanted to just sort of give you an update, since we're on the Zoom call with you, give an update on what we've done since we last talked. As you're all aware, and as came up at the last Zoom meeting I attended with you, there's current flood mapping, there's proposed flood mapping, and then there's this study that was done by Cornell. And the net of all of that is that, in combination with the work we're doing to reduce our unit count as per the last go-around on the RFP questions. We're working to raise the elevation so that we have long-term durability, and also to reduce the scale of the building a little bit, because we're bringing the unit count down somewhat. The greater information, I guess, is to tell you that our intention is to get together a set of materials by Labor Day that will allow us to begin reaching out to stakeholders. And I wanted to sort of go through what I mean by stakeholders in a minute, but we want to sort of get a set of materials that will, of course, be renderings, and it'll be clear in everything we're doing that this is not an approved anything, this is for discussion. So we're just going to get the materials updated so that what we're showing is sort of putting our best foot forward. So that's part of that's the materials. Part of that will also include some fiscal analysis, school children analysis, demographic analysis, just for the actual development that we're starting with. We want to get baseline information so that when we have meetings with people, we're not wasting their time, and that will allow us to, ask questions and provide information, get back to people, but starting with sort of a good baseline of information. So I think that by Labor Day, I think at the latest, we'll be ready to do that. In terms of the stakeholders, I had asked Karen to give me a list of stakeholders in the village, most of whom I knew, but there's a lot of contact information that we need. Really talking about groups and individuals. I'm going to quickly rattle some off. This is not meant to be an all-inclusive list, but we're talking about school district, tax assessor, the EAC, the recreation department and the recreation advisory group, village historian, IFCA, Scenic Hudson, the Austin Business Alliance, Open Door, and also a local place of worship. And that list will grow as time goes on, but that's sort of where we're starting. And I will get input from the smaller group that includes Bob and Omar and the rest of this group to make sure that we're hitting all the groups of people we should. I envision this, and having done it before, many of these meetings will be more than one time. So what happens is we'll meet with people and things will come up. They'll have ideas or questions, and we'll get back together with them with answers and sort of further refine this. the goal of all of this is to get to a place where, roughly 160 days from now, more or less, we have something that we hope to have refined and have pretty broad support for what we're doing, and a lot more than anything else to have input and to make people feel like they're part of evolving this plan to something that will be viewed as positive for the village.
I have a question when it comes to, am I on?
Yep.
Okay. When it comes to, like, you're giving a timeline of Labor Day and stakeholders, are we, meaning we, the four of us and whoever is a part of this discussion right now, are we going to, so to speak, look at a dry run so we're all kind of on the same page when it comes to bringing this in front of people?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I just don't want to, someone says, well, Trustee Fritchie, what about this? And I stand there going, oh, blah, 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 blah. And, I think it would be good for all of us to at least have knowledge of where we're trying to go, and it's also a discussion to be had to say, maybe we shouldn't do that, or, you know what I'm saying? I would rather us all be somewhat on the same page when we go to put this in front of stakeholders and the public.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I don't know if anybody else feels.
Agreed.
Just a couple other things that we're going to work on, hopefully by Labor Day. We walked the property the other day with Paul and the smaller group of some of the people on this phone call, and it's really evident that we should do a photo montage of the existing conditions of the property, because when you look at it from Water Street, you see what you see, but it's very deceiving because it's a much bigger property than it appears to be from Water Street, and there's a lot more going on, a lot more that has happened on the property, a lot more disturbance. It's a transfer station or so currently, but there's a lot that's going on in the property. I think it's important when we're talking about what we're going to do with the property for people to understand what we're starting with. So, and when I talked about on the sign, we're going to have this website, the web page on the bottom. We'll take the materials, a photo montage of the existing conditions, and everything that we're going to be presenting to stakeholders in terms of a draft fiscal analysis and other things we talk about when we get together, Bob, as you had mentioned, and sort of agree that these are the materials we're going to be presenting. We'll put all of that on this website so that it's not just people we meet with, in formal stakeholder meeting, but anyone who's interested, people will be able to have access to this. I think it's just very important that we're not hiding anything from anyone, that we don't want to be in a place, in 6 months where people feel like, oh, I didn't know there was a meeting, or I didn't know that there was material available. So we're really, with your help, going to go out of our way to make this very transparent and provide really good information to people about what we're starting with and what we're proposing. And on that topic, we have a very old survey that we were provided, which we learned needs some work. So one of the other things we're going to be doing is updating the survey to make it accurate, because we can't really get into, we have time for this, but we can't finalize any sort of building or footprint layouts until the survey is right. Ultimately, what we're showing is all schematic for now, so it doesn't really matter. But I just want to be confident there are no big busts on the topography and just other things on the property. So just another thing we'll be doing is updating the survey. Just give me a moment. I'm just looking at my notes. We also, I think, online, on the website, we'll also put the updated flood mapping information, because it's something I think people will be asking about. I don't think that's a big deal to do. It's all readily available. That's about it. Does anyone have any questions or any thoughts about what we can do better?
Just one thing. I know on the job sites that I'm on, we use Procore, and there's other types of platforms that the general contractors use, and they generally have used what clicked this in my head was a new set of montage of pictures. You could watch this from the first shovel in the ground to progress to date. And I don't know if that's something that'd be an option. I know it's a little early for saying it, but while it's in my head, I'm just throwing it out there. If that's something that could be on the website, maybe, progress of the site or whatever, and they could see from day one when you put a shovel in the ground to where we're standing at. It's just
we're actually I love that stuff. We use Procore, by the way, but we also use EarthCam to do exactly what you're saying. And Nourishell, where we're building this 27-story building we talked about before, it's so cool. You can see it's sort of from the beginning to the end. Where I think we're on the 22nd story right now, and you can see the whole thing from before we broke ground all the way through today.
Yep.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
it is premature, but it's a good idea.
Right, Procore is good. I'll be asking for my my request to be on that Procore. So I'm on a 66-story building, and I could go back to the day they pulled the machines into the block and to where we're at. 37 floors now. It's just an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
I think that is super helpful. One of the elements that I want to consider is that right now is a time where we're asking for a lot of public engagement for various things, the comprehensive plan, the census, many different projects. And so I want this to, this I think will naturally attract people, but the more visual the elements can be, you were talking about having photos, whether it's having kind of a video that using a drone or something like that you can see from an aerial perspective. You can really get a sense of the space as it is, and really like bring that map that you see there to life, because I think that people, for example, the Sing Sing Kill Greenway is something that people really appreciate, is to understand how this is a continuation of that. This is what all the elements are. The more visual, the more compelling, I think, the better. But overall, I'd say that the beginnings of the engagement plan sound right.
Okay. I love the drone idea. It's a good idea. I mean, this map it's very hard. It took us a long time to make this map as good as it is, because there's just so much, and a drone a drone video would be a great idea. Karen, I don't have anything else. Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I just, if the board has any questions, we have Jaime's here as well. We can answer any questions about the process going forward. Otherwise,
so I'll ask just one question here. On one of the things that we're working toward is updated language in our local laws with respect to wetlands. So I just want to know, have you been aware of these wetlands, it's a legislation that we're pushing through, and what impact, if any, do you think it'll have on the DPW site?
Yeah, when we walked the site the other day, I was made aware of that. I guess I did not know that you were doing that. It's my homework assignment for next week is for my team to really understand your draft. This is a draft right now, right? It's a draft ordinance. Yeah, we need to look at that. I mean, this site is such a good example of how one might have unintended consequences from a code that means well. And it may be that this site is actually a very good example of wetland restoration that you would want to happen on a site. So the Sing Sing Kill is obviously, we're right next to it. It's totally pretty close to 100% impervious right up to the edges. But to work in it, we would need a wetland permit. To do anything, we'll need a wetland permit. So I'll look at the code with an eye toward this property should be an example of what we would want. That's why I would just hope that when I look at the code, that's how the code reads. But I have not done that yet.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I was going to mention that, so thanks, Omar. I guess I have a couple questions, and one of them is obviously for Stuart as well. So in regards to the timing, I would like to see, what is your timing with COVID going on, and I know that there's a subcommittee working with you, but I would like to have some sort of an idea in how the engagement comes along. What does that relate to the next couple months? Because we do have 100, as you said, 180 days, and that kind of comes really quick, within a blink of an eye. The other question that I have is in regards to the LATA itself. What does that look like at this point? Are you guys starting to talk in regards to this? Do we have to wait before the 180 days to start working on this to get some feedback from the community? How does that work on this particular project now?
Just one moment. Jaime, can you put us back into our panel mode? Yeah, thank you.
Could I, Jaime, the graph, or so to speak, I think that would help Omar and Manny maybe understand what we looked at yesterday.
Yeah, I have the timeline right here. Let me see if I can share my screen. I cannot share my screen. Jaime, can you let me?
Can you share now?
I can, yeah. All right. All right, can everybody see the entire graph?
Yes.
Great. So the way that I broke the timeline, and this is just it's a draft right now. I think I have the framework of it, but if we wanted to add little points and we identify the specific dates for meetings, that would help. But the idea is that sort of the first month we start the negotiation, which is kind of really already started. By the second month, we should have a website up with renderings of the proposal and provide a place that links back to an area where you can provide comments. We've kind of identified where those comments are going to go right now, so we're moving forward with that. By the third month, once we have the sort of the framework of the outside plan of the negotiation, we would go into an initial public hearing. So that puts us, essentially looking at doing one sometime in September. If everything continues to move forward with the way that COVID has processed so far, it looks like in August we're going to be able to do public hearings. And so if everything holds, steady, then theoretically we'll have at least a month in before we hold this public hearing, and the board can choose whether to do it in person or whether to do it on Zoom, depending on the preference of the board. At that point, we would get comments, and if there was any more comments that needed to be massaged into the proposal, that would take place. We would then have a second public hearing to show the revisions to the plan that are reflective of the comments that were received and whatever changes that the board felt need to be made based off of those comments. Present the second plan, give a second opportunity for people to provide any additional comments if necessary. And then at that point, we would be able to finalize with a proposal around 5 months from the beginning of this process and come to an agreement of terms at the end of the 6-month period. So that is, it provides a pretty robust period of time. There's about, 3 months of active public engagement that would take place during that time. The public hearings themselves can be both in English and Spanish. And if there are other elements that you want to add in, such as some of the things that Bill Balter talked a little bit about, like, reaching out directly to community groups, setting up stakeholder meetings or anything else, that would be, sort of the time frame where you would want to integrate that in to the process, and we can add that to the timeline officially.
Thanks, Jaime. Is that document, obviously is a living document, so is that something that you can share with the board? Or at least I would like to get a copy. Just, I know it's a draft, I know it's a very, very early draft, but I would like to have that, just to keep in mind and keep track of this particular project on my end, just to see what the status is.
Yeah, we can distribute the timeline. That's no problem.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I left off one last element, but in month 7, if the agreement of terms is completed by the end of the 6 months, month 7 would begin the process for seeker and site plan approval. So, and that would take certainly longer. We don't know how long that would take, but that would be the beginning of that process.
But you don't have this in months. It says periods across. So
yeah, the periods
that's a
represent.
template.
It's a template that represents months, so each period is 1 month essentially.
Right. So you should do that, because as this becomes public, people aren't going to know that, and I guess you'll be updating it as necessary.
Okay.
The answer to the question of sort of the agreement, I envision that we'll begin to negotiate a land disposition agreement that will obviously not get signed until the board approves it, and the board wouldn't approve it until the board gets a sense if they want to go forward or not. I don't think there's any reason to start negotiating that now. I think we should get farther down the road. I think everyone will feel better about it after we have had some public input, or not, but I think we want to get farther before we do that. So I would envision that probably in about roughly 2 to 3 months, we will begin that process. It'll take probably a couple of months to negotiate, and then it'll go back to your board for consideration, toward the end of this process. I assume, Jaime, that's what you had in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to confuse the viewing public when we're talking about going through the proposal and presenting it, and getting feedback from the public and changing the plan. That is part of the negotiation. So some of the finer points of what's the cost of the site, and the functional ownership of the kill and parking and things like that are all factors that go into it behind the scenes. But I think it's important to clarify that some of the elements that are getting discussed as a part of the proposal are part of the negotiation. And so, yes, I mean, the formal, handing it off to the lawyers would take place closer to the end. But it's all part of the same process.
Right. Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so I think this, I want to, if any of the other trustees want to say anything, which I'm not hearing anybody.
Nope, I think we can go on with the agenda.
Great. Well, listen, thank you so much, Bill, for joining us tonight, and you will be seeing us and hearing from us.
Okay. Thank you all for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, so next on the agenda, we have Paul Fraioli and Andy Teese here tonight to talk about our Indian Brook Water Treatment Plant update. We have an update on that, our plans for improving that site and doing renovation work there. We also will be talking about a UV system that we want to incorporate, which is an add-on to the original plan, due to the fact that it can be very helpful in controlling and mitigating any problems that we have with MIB in the future, which, as you know, was caused by an algae bloom towards the end of last year. And we want to make sure that if that problem arises again, that we can handle it as effectively as possible. So there's some technology we'll be talking about for that. With that, I would like to, and then Paul will be speaking specifically on DPW updates that we're doing around the village this summer and into the early fall in terms of paving and other public works initiatives that we're doing. So with that, I would like to turn this over to our Superintendent of Water, Andy Teese, and our DPW Director, Paul Fraioli.
Thank you, Manager Dettori. If it pleasures the board and the manager, what Andy and I did was incorporate the water into the update, and it's all under the one PowerPoint that Jamie's going to upload for us. And if it's okay with you guys, we'd really like to rifle through the update and then segue into the more important part of our presentation, which, as the manager said, is the update on the plant, which is at the end of the presentation. And we're going to roll right into the UV component of the plant, and that's why you see Julie Herzner has joined us from Hazen and Sawyer, the design firm for the potable plant, and she'll join us at the end. So I think it's going to take about 10 minutes to go through the update, and then maybe give a little more, as we should, time to the bigger agenda items.
Sounds
That
good.
works.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me? Just want to make sure because I see the PowerPoint.
All good.
Okay, thank you. So real quick, she's not on anymore, but this was our little shout out to Dana White for a job well done over the last 5 years. She actually gave me this picture a few years ago when we started the work on the Broadway Bridge. That's obviously the masons working on the stonework on the Old Croton Aqueduct.
Obviously,
Over the Broadway Bridge.
obviously an OSHA approved system they have there too.
Yeah. So anyway, that picture's pretty neat. It's actually my screensaver, so I wanted to use it here to kind of give her a little shout out. But moving on, we'll go through and try to hold some questions to the end. And when we get to the part about the water, we'll take a little space to see if there's any questions on anything that's presented to date. Next. Thank you, Jamie. So administratively, before we get into the pretty pictures, I want to talk about some of the things that have been going on in the office since COVID hit, really. We basically ran the office uninterrupted, but obviously we had to maintain our distancing and our separation, but we were able to get some of the key items done that we do every year, and I listed them here. We have documented all the COVID-related expenses with the finance department. In case there isn't a reimbursement program that comes down, we'll be able to solicit that money from the appropriate entity. We completed our 2019 annual stormwater report, filing with the DEC. That's also on our website, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about some of the project work. We published our 2019 annual water quality report. We circulate that via bulk mail, and that's also on our website. One thing to notice about that, there is some standard language that we have to include in there that is standardized around the county that references what non-English speaking folks should do, and it's written in Spanish should they desire to get the information in that report. Quarterly billing of dumpsters was sent out uninterrupted. We actually picked up 3 new customers this last quarter, so that was some unanticipated revenue that we're going to get to go into our general fund. The clerk's office was very gracious in helping us with where a large part of folks come to visit us. They come to get mattress bags, Freon stickers, biodegradable bags, etc. Were all issued by the clerk's office, and they still are issuing them through the reopening full-time of our office on August 1st. Code 53 coordination, which is the call before you dig for any of the work going on in the village underground, was also maintained every day, uninterrupted. The biggest solicitor of Code 53 work from the village and other utilities is Con Ed. They've obviously done a tremendous amount of work during this pandemic, and you can see that going on around the village. Yes, it is very disruptive, but I think this was the right time to do it, and I'm glad they did it when they did. And we do collect actual permits for that, and we anticipate between the work that you see going on right now to take another anticipated revenue of about $15,000 coming into the village. We were able to finalize the one piece of capital equipment that we wanted to maintain when we considered cutting back because of the pandemic. We were able to finalize the documentation for the bucket truck and have issued that purchase order to the vendor and expect that in a couple of months. Very important piece of equipment for us to have. Most importantly, we had uninterrupted response during the entire pandemic, and continue to do that the way we structured the office with the staffing there from the 8 to 3:30 hours. We've had a real positive feedback from the residents during this time too, that they were happy that the office was still very attentive when they call in during regular business hours or leave a message after hours. Let's get into some field pictures. Next, please. This was probably the most important field facet that came into play when COVID hit. Definitely, and I'll underscore it, the essential is defined by sanitation collection, and all the other things can be put on hold to some extent, except emergencies. So the way we handled COVID was we basically put all hands on deck, including the folks that are on the crew, that aren't everyday sanitation workers. We used our extra sanitation vehicles and put everybody on sanitation for the first few weeks of the pandemic to make sure all the garbage got off the road. And we had uninterrupted service, which I think was a great thing, right through it all. And I know people appreciated that. A lot of folks complimented the guys out there, and we appreciate the words. Next, please. It's good to know that also all our daily use vehicles every night during this pandemic, and we continue to do so. This picture was actually taken this evening and uploaded into the program. This is one of our maintenance workers that stays back after everything goes back into the garage at night, and he sanitizes it with hypochlorous acid that's supplied to us through OVAC. And we put it with the demister on every piece of equipment. After the folks clean it and park it, it gets disinfected. And hypochlorous acid, when it reacts with oxygen, releases that free chloride, which is actually a good disinfectant that doesn't cause corrosion. So that's why we use it. Next, please. This was the one that you already saw with the sneak peek. This was some of the preliminary work that we were doing when we were digging out the area and re-landscaping the entire detail at Dewar Circle. And that was a nice event yesterday, and I appreciate the kind words that you gave us, Mayor, for our work there. Very, very positive for that whole area. Next, please. We also, in that area, concurrent with the work we were doing there, worked with our annual bid contractor to mill the entire area. Next, please. Followed by the paving of Brandreth from Main Street all the way down, inclusive of the circle, which you see in the background there in that photo. Came out very nicely. Next, please. For which we also did on Revolutionary Road. We milled and then paved the entire road there as well, prior to line striping, which at the end of the project, next please, left us with not only a much more pleasurable road to travel on, but safer for pedestrians to go through those areas. If you recognize the bottom right, that's where Revolutionary Road intersects with Route 9, with the new paving, getting rid of the hump, and with the new striping there, much safer for drivers and pedestrians. Next, please. This, if you can see in the background of this photo with the excavator in the foreground, is the earthen mound, which we eventually put vegetation on there to act as a visual buffer for the passerbyers and some of the lower level areas in the Varium Condo Association, which you see in the background. We are partnered with them early on. Karen, Manager Dettori, and I went down and met with the Homeowners Association numerous times in advance of really concurrent with moving along the Water Street project that we did. We were just discussing with Wilder Balter, because we did tell them that we plan on using this lot to take a lot of the work that we won't be able to do in a year or so on the Water Street project and putting it to our North Water Street parcel. And we're going to do everything we can to maintain that lot as visually appealing as possible and to the satisfaction of the area residents. So we're trying to be good neighbors, in short. That's ongoing. The reason we pulled, if you haven't seen work going on in the last 2 days there, I'll get to that later in the presentation. Next, please. This is one time I will allow you to interrupt. I'll allow the board to guess to see if they know what that is. Anybody? Anybody? Okay, too late. That is a
You didn't give me a chance to unmute.
Okay.
That looks like a camera shot of either a sewer drain or a water pipe.
Yeah, that is a 8-inch sanitary sewer line on Westerly, and if you go to the next slide, that is the repair being made to that line, because what you saw was a blockage of a pipe collapse from an old lining effort that was made there some years ago. And they're working down there right now. We use the excavator who's working up the street on the North Water Street lot to help us excavate there. And I put this there to also so you could see the safety component too. They have their hard hats on there because there's an excavator in the area. They have the proper shoring box there and the evacuation ladder. The guys take safety very seriously. This is a nice job and typical of all the work they do out there. Keep in mind, it was about 95 degrees when they're doing this too. Working very hard lately. Oh, next please. You're going to see a capital piece of equipment that you purchased a couple of years that's been worth its weight in gold already. To the right, you see the vac hole machine, which this board graciously funded for DPW. This vac hole not only does our annual bid catch basin cleaning that we file with the aforementioned MS4 permit every year that we filed for our stormwater, but it also used extensively for excavating for water main breaks and sewer collection issues, which we have on Wesley right now. Again, this picture was just taken this morning. This did most of the excavation after the blacktop was cut. Very safe, very effective means of excavating. And again, thank you for that, because it makes things safer, easier, and an overall better job with less disturbance for everybody involved. So appreciate that. Next, please. Now I'm going to turn it over to, next, please.
Who's this guy?
Okay. Yes, this guy. Hi, everybody. So yeah, we focused with COVID on putting these sneeze guards up, and this was one of the first installations at our office. You can go to the next slide. And that's upstairs in the building department, town. Next slide. And then we did the village too, which is not on there. But you can go to the next slide, which is fine. This is the new charging stations that we installed. Paul and the highway guys pretty much had this all organized as far as like designing it and figuring out the parking lot spaces. Our maintenance staff and the annual electrician worked with us, and we ran the power to those two spots. So they're powered electrical cars, and it's just plugs right in with an adapter, so it could fit 2 cars. Next slide. That was a job that was accomplished last week at the police station. That's the rehabilitation of the HVAC system at the court facility and the police station. 6 rooftop units, and a year and a half ago, we changed the other unit in the court facility. All new VAV boxes, which this board approved graciously for us a couple of months ago for that change order. And the only thing that's left is tying in the actual control system, which will be worked on the next couple of weeks. Next slide. That's a picture on top today of the tour bank tank. Just figure out what to add it to, because we're going to talk about the tank project. Next slide. All right, so that's a picture of conduit that just was installed beginning of this week at the Pleasantville Road tank. This and the concrete was poured today. It's not in this picture, but that is the disinfectant byproduct removal system, treatment system for the Pleasantville Road, Lakeville, and Torbank tanks. We started this project. This was to remove the disinfectant byproducts out of all the tanks that we had problems for years. We can't wait to get this tank online. It's a 3.8 million gallon tank. The tank that's online now is a 250,000 gallon tank. So the next 6 months we'll be working on all 3 tanks. Next slide. Okay, Paul can talk to this, and we'll bring Julie Herzner in, but this is the schedule.
I believe this is the last slide, so before we start transferring to Julie, are you on with us, by the way, Julie?
Yes, I am, Paul.
Great, thank you. This is the schedule that Andy, Julie, and I discussed when Julie was finalizing her submittal for the grant associated with this project, which she could talk a little bit about before she talks about the UV. But before we get to Julie, I just wanted to conclude by saying the first week in August, which I think the Monday is August 3rd, we expect to be fully staffed with everybody back in the office with the appropriate separation and PPE in place. But I did want to, again, commend everybody in BPW and all the support we got from the other village departments helping us without the service interruptions, because Central Garage was here keeping everybody's rolling stock going. The filter plant was operated 24 hours, 7 days a week without interruption. Everybody came in there. And again, the sanitation guys had uninterrupted service throughout the entire pandemic. So everybody will be back full time to join the field crews that have been here full time. And now we can transfer into the bulk of the presentation this evening, which is this schedule here, which we're still on track to do. I believe Julie just submitted back to the county health department the new final comments for our construction documents. We don't anticipate the turnaround to be that long, because I know the county is back as well working full-time, so those comments should come back pretty, hopefully, knock on wood, relatively soon, and we can start preparing the final bid documents to coincide with this schedule. So with that in mind, I'd like Andy to introduce the next, or actually the agenda item that used to precede this, which is an additional proposal for Hazen and Sawyer to investigate the specifics of the UV disinfection, which was actually a little change in scope from Hazen and Sawyer's original proposal when they were awarded the design of the plant.
Okay, just for a little background on the MIB, everybody I think on this board is very familiar with the MIB issues that we had within the last 6 months. Right now, you can switch the slide.
I think there's one after this, yeah. Jamie?
Okay,
Thank
well,
you.
that's just a reservoir, but it's a beautiful picture anyways. The MIB coming into our facility right now is 3 parts per trillion. We're sending out less than 1 part per trillion, and that's due to the powder activated carbon system that the board approved us installing back in February. And if you remember back then, 6 months ago, we were as high as 100 parts per trillion. So the silver lining that it took a while to get the filter plant designed, you know, at this stage and taking so long in the health department review, which took a while. We're able to catch these issues before the filter plant actually goes out and it's bid and built. The health department got the final comments from Hazen and Sawyer today, and the holdup on that was that the health department wanted us at some point to pilot our water again and New York City's water, and we all talked them out of it by saying New York City piloted this water for real for the last 10 years on the new filter plant. So we requested all New York City's water quality data, which saved the village over $1 million in piloting this plant with a tiny plant. So they're allowing us to build this plant based on other data, our own plant and New York City's plant. So in the meantime, I'd like to introduce Julie Herzner, who works for Hazen. She's the senior engineer. And we asked Julie, because we know that the scope has changed a little bit here, to give us a proposal to evaluate the system a little more before we just go and design a system that won't fit or will cause the footprint to change in our existing filter plant. We don't want to take this design that it's already designed and add onto the filter plant and change the parameters and then have to go through the planning board and cost more. If they can work with outside agencies and design the best system that meets our plant. Now, one thing that we had to decide was, do we want to have the system be designed for 300 MIB because we have no baseline information before this year. 150, 120, 100. That's what this study is going to show us. And it's, Julie, if you want, you can take over from here.
Sure, thanks, Andy. So the original or the previous design of the water treatment plant was submitted to the Westchester County Department of Health in December of 2018.
Julie?
Yes?
I think there's a UJECA. You may have either 2 devices on or something. Or it may just be me hearing you in an echo chamber, but it's a little difficult to hear you.
There's a definite echo.
Sorry. Let me know. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out what the other device is. Is it any better right now?
Now it is,
much better. Much better.
Okay. All right. Well, great. I didn't actually hear the echo. But, is it coming back?
If you have a cell phone near you, I would suggest moving it away from you.
Just trying to turn it. Okay, let me try to see
I would
if
just
I can
push it
turn
away
off.
from you.
Okay, that's probably it. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I was saying we submitted the design to the health department in December 2018. As Andy said, there's been back and forth over the last year and a half with some long waits on comments. Where I think this is the last round. We submitted responses this morning to their most recent comments, and so we feel that we should have approval of the existing treatment process soon. In the timeline of the year and a half that DOH had been reviewing it, there was an unprecedented water event in Cronin Lake, which, as you know, supplies Indian Brook. It's the majority of the water supplied to the Indian Brook water treatment plant. So with that event, there's been, there was not something in the original treatment train that would handle the MIB event that was seen. So Andy came back and asked to take a look at other technologies. There was some previous work that was done just setting the dose that would be needed for a technology called UV AOP, which is ultraviolet disinfection with an advanced oxidation process. So you're adding an oxidant with the UV reactors. Our previous design already had UV reactors in the plant. However, with this new process, the UV reactors need to be much bigger. So with that being said, we have this established design. It's very close to being approved, and we are interested in looking at a way to install this new technology with minimal impacts to the plant. So we propose breaking the work into two pieces. One, smaller piece, which is an evaluation to refine the design criteria and try to minimize the footprint of the new treatment process and also minimize the hydraulics impacts to the plant. So basically, we're going to have to go into the existing plant, locate these new larger reactors that have impacts on the area that was laid out originally for the UV reactors, as well as the hydraulics through the plant. So we felt that if we could study a couple of options for how to do that before we determined the overall design impacts, so we would be able to do this more efficiently. The impacts ultimately will be structural, architectural impacts that will increase the size of the building slightly. We have real limitations on the site where, we're not going to be moving to the north or the east, and there's limitations on the south of where the facility is located because there's utilities in the roadway, and then there's there's limitations to the west as well, where we were trying to stay off of a wetland area. So it's really important to try to keep this compact and to do an efficient analysis of this new treatment system. So the proposal we submitted.
Sorry to interrupt. Can somebody translate for me? I feel like if it's going on this long, maybe somebody's understanding what she's saying. I need help.
Sorry. Ask Andy and Paul to really reflect all this really valuable information you're providing for us, or for you to find another way to communicate, because it's painful to listen to you right now. And I know what you're saying is important for us to understand.
Yep, so basically, I can say it real quick. So basically, we asked Julie to come up with an evaluation study instead of just coming up with a proposal to design this whole system. Spend tons of time with their engineers on changing all the mechanicals, changing the building footprint, not knowing exactly what size they were going to need to size for. This study will break down the exact size of what we need to put in that facility to meet our MIB removal so that we could take it to the next step. It's unfair to ask them to design a system of that magnitude without defining the scope more. And with this $15,000 study, it defines the scope more so that we can get a better cost estimate at the end of adjusting it. The powder activated carbon system has to be designed at the head of the plant by Hazen and Sawyer, because they are the design engineers, and that's what the health department wants, and the true size of these reactors. So it's a preliminary study so that we can get the final findings of what our scope needs to be without overestimating our final scope. That's the simplest way I could say it.
Thank you, Andy.
Yep. I think it's definitely the right way to move forward if we want to handle an MIB situation. And just so that everybody's aware, we're putting in multiple barriers, right? So right now we're okay with the MIB. It's coming in so low at only 3 parts per trillion, whereas before it was as high as 100. When Arcadis looked at this, when we were designing the PAC system, they had it sized as high as 300 because it could be that, but we don't know that for sure. So we are looking at it like We don't want to oversize this system and waste money. Is it going to be 100 parts per trillion? Is it going to be 150? If we go above 150, we have to change the footprint of this plant, which will cost millions of dollars to change. So that's why this evaluation is so important.
So just one question, Andy, on it. The capability of this system that you're proposing is you have parameters. I'm hearing 100, 150. Is that the 150 is a max that it would handle?
Yep. So based on a 6.5 million gallon per day plant, there has to be a certain time that the water is in contact with this UV system. And I think it's going to be as high as 150, but we could make it probably as low as 120. And that makes a huge difference as far as reactors. Reactors can be high pressure, low pressure, and that makes a big difference as far as how the footprint of this fits into the plant. Like, this system is being added later after the footprint was designed, and we don't want to go change that if we don't have to. So Hazen looked at this really closely and is like, we might be able to do it a different way and save you guys a lot of money. And the only way to do it is to do this evaluation with the University of Toronto, with these outside vendors that can actually take the water. We'll ship the water to them with Hazen, and they are the experts, and we're going to do the most cost-effective system. I don't want a proposal from Hazen premature to do the whole entire change out, and then it could have been done cheaper this way.
Right. Is the footprint going to be affected either way?
Julie, well,
when you say either way, are you talking about whether it's 150 as a starting MIB concentration or 120? Well, it's
right. I mean, my opinion is I would prepare for the worst.
Yep.
And say, you know, if it's a max of 150, and whether it's 120 or 150, and you were changing the footprint, then, you know, to me, I would err on the safe side and stay with the bigger system. But that's my opinion.
Pretty much the marching order was put the largest MIB removal system in the treatment plant without changing the footprint.
Okay, and
kind of work backwards.
Right, I get that, totally get that. And do we have an idea what that largest system would be, or this is what the study's about?
That's what this study's going to do.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty smart that you started off by telling us that we didn't have to spend that $1 million that we were originally being asked to spend to do another study, because agreeing to spend $15,000 on a study to make sure that we make the right decision is a lot easier to swallow at this stage of the meeting. Well done, sir. Does anybody have any more questions for Paul and Andy to help make sense of this and understand what we're being asked for tonight?
So, Andy, early in the year, thank you for this presentation. Early in the year, when we're going through these challenges with our water system, we expanded obviously from our budget to put this new system right now that is a current water treatment plant. So can you enlighten me in regards to what is the future of that treatment right now that we install in addition to the water itself, and how does that move forward?
Sure. Good question. So at the peak of this, the peak of our usage of sending the powder activated carbon into our raw water to take the MIB out, we were as high as 1,400 pounds a day. Right now we're down to 200 pounds per day. We could possibly turn it off, but I don't want to turn it off because we found positive effects. There's another algae that's in New York City's water, and it's in our water. It's called geosmin, and we've reduced that by using the powder activated carbon. So it's pretty cost effective at this point, what we're feeding a day compared to other chemicals. We are developing that baseline that we talked about because we want to go through a full season of how much chemical we actually use, and then how we're going to handle dealing with New York City with talking to them about putting money into the system, because we have the cost of what it costs for the new system, what it costs for us to install it, and the cost of what chemicals we're feeding. We're really curious to see what's going to happen when New York City turns on this water system, their filter plant, in the fall. And you know, originally I thought it was turning their filtration plant on. New York City said it had nothing to do with that, but we have a good baseline now, and we're just following things closely. And we're going to address this as we go farther. with the new plant. This system, I asked you guys if we could purchase this instead of renting it. This system is going to be, once the new plant's going to go online, it's going to be two systems side by side, and there'll be another system so that we don't have to call operators in 3 o'clock in the morning where it's two guys to change out the chemicals. It's, you know, only one system. There's no redundancy. But it's also, the design is looking at how much we can reduce the MIB with the powder activated carbon, and then reduce it with the UV system so that we don't have to oversize the UV system. We know that the UV system can be a little bit smaller because this powder activated carbon system is working so well. But when it was 100 parts coming in, that system, the existing system brought it down to 40. So all this information is going into this study. So we don't oversize our UV system, but that we have a multiple barrier.
Thank you, Andy. That clears my question, so I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions?
I do, unless some of the other trustees do. No, you're good. I just want to understand, as you're looking at what the parameters are, or how far you might want to go or need to go for the new system to reduce the MIB, is one of the considerations, you know, to not continue using the powder activated carbon system. If you didn't use that, would that give you enough of a footprint to go to a larger UV system that would be worthwhile?
I think that's part of the study, right? Because there is a cost for using the powder activated carbon. And, you know, it's a fine line because we also reduce manganese in our water. So when it's inverse. When there's high MIB, there's low manganese, and when there's high manganese, there's low MIB. So the tension times are affected with this, and also chemical costs. So we're going to look at the chemicals versus the electrical cost versus the capital cost. But that UV system, I think we're going to design, it's going to be hard to get it in the existing plant, the UV system. So it's not like we can put a 300 pound system in when MIB system in when I think the top end is going to be 150. If we can get 150, I'd be really happy, but I think it's going to be more towards 120. But like I said, we do not have a baseline on this, and New York City never tested for MIB. It's the first time in history they had MIB, and we only have 1 year of 100. We might not see this for 3 more years, or we might see this in the fall. We're at least in a good position now where we'll be okay to get through until the filter plant's built, but we're okay up to 100 MIB. And what bought us more time with getting through the 100 MIB season is that we had our own Indian Brook water and we diluted it at a 50% ratio. Right now we're using 100% New York City water. Our reservoir is almost 100% full. Our goal is to have that totally full by the fall, so that if we have the situation, we could draw partly down on our reservoir and partly down on New York City and not have the water quality complaint. So basically, it's like money in the bank right now.
Great.
Oh, I want just a point of clarification. So with the powder activated carbon system now, you're using, I don't know, would you say 100 pounds, 200
pounds?
Right. So if and when this UV system comes up, they're going to work in conjunction with each other and should reduce the amount of chemicals we're using on that system we have now.
Absolutely. And we're only going to feed it, the powder activated carbon up to a point of probably to just handle the geosmin and reduce the MIB a little bit. Now, one thing that's so important about this study is that there's peroxide involved with this, which is greatly reduces the MIB with the UV system. That peroxide has to be sequestered, and the only way to sequester that peroxide is to increase the chlorine at the filtration plant. So it's a catch-22. I don't want to run the UV reactor so high and run so much peroxide that I have to use a lot of chlorine and then cause disinfectant byproducts. If I can handle a majority of it with the powder activated carbon, the UV is more of like an insurance policy. UV is going to be great for the disinfection, but there's so many variables. So I can't just say we're just going to just reduce powder activated carbon. It's going to depend on what's coming into the plant. But it's, you know, we're designing for worst cases, and, you know, I'm just happy that it happened before the plant was bid.
I also just want to take this opportunity, since we've been talking a little bit about some of the challenges that we've had with water, particularly the taste and odor with the MIB. There was work done on the water system a couple of weeks ago, and we got a number of folks who were asking if there was a problem with it. When there's, you know, either discoloration or odor or taste issues, the water department is all over it and working to figure it out. And sometimes it's something that clears itself in a day when you talk about, you know, actual just work on the system. And sometimes it's figuring out how to address MIB, which, as we know, was a much bigger undertaking. But one thing that's important to let community members know, and this is really me just communicating with my colleagues on the board, I don't know if you get as many direct complaints, but it's for people to know that it is safe. And I think in my whole time in the last 8 years on the board that we've had a situation where there's a boil water notice, we made a big deal of letting everybody know about it. And even then it was a precautionary boil water notice. Our public works team, our water team, just really goes above and beyond to make sure that the water that you're getting is safe. It may not taste as good one season as you expect it to every other season, but there's never been a safety concern related to this MIB. And if there ever is a safety concern, not with MIB, that we already understand that, but if something were to happen with the system, it's important for the public to know that there would be lots and lots of communication coming from the village in a variety of methods. And what we had 7 years ago, the last time this happened, doesn't come close to the amount of communication vehicles that we have today. So these are all measures to make our water, to make the production of it and the cleaning of it more efficient, and to be able to maximize the capacity of the new plant. That thankfully we have a tremendous team of people who are making sure that the water is optimally produced and managed and tastes the best going forward for years to come. So thank you for figuring out how to get beyond where we are today, which was a Herculean effort to get the powder activated carbon system in place. But really, this is such a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to address it more proactively going forward, that the timing worked out, that we had this unfortunate MIB influx or issue to deal with in this past year while we're in the planning stages. So thank you very much for figuring this out when you did. And what are we being asked for tonight? Because there's a $15,000 request for this study. Is this a change order, or is there anything that we're needing to vote on, or you're just bringing it to us for our awareness?
I guess there'll be a resolution in the regular legislative meeting, but just so that the board is aware of it, and that that you're okay with us moving forward in this direction to approve the $15,000 for the study. And like I said, the last thing I'm waiting for is the final proposal for all the changes from Hazen. But it's the whole purpose of this is so that they can really understand what needs to be changed at the plant, and they can give us an accurate final proposal for the design changes. And you guys will get a copy of that from the manager's office as soon as this study's finished, and that they come up with something that's fair and equitable for both parties.
Okay. I didn't hear any objection from anybody. Is everybody okay with, we'll expect to get a resolution? We're all good with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Andy. And Paul, I assume, is 6 feet away from you at that table.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for the support. And one thing I just want to say is, yeah, I think you know that we don't just cross our fingers. We prepare for the worst case scenarios, and we've been very lucky with timing with this water system for the last 15 years, how things have laid out. And, as stressful as it was, thank God it happened before the plant was designed and built. That would have been a real problem. So thanks again.
Thank you. And I just want to say to Julie Herzner, thank you so much for joining us. And we've had a lot of experience working with Hazen and Sawyer in different aspects of our plan. And I'm sorry that the technology was in our favor tonight, so we didn't get to hear from you directly. And I'm grateful that Andy is so well versed in this that he can step in. And I trust that if he said anything that needed to be corrected, that you would have jumped in no matter what you sounded like and made sure that we had accurate information.
Yes, that's right. Sorry everybody for maybe giving too much information. So thanks again, Andy. But again, thank you for having me on tonight so I could talk to you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Julie, I think it was not so much the information, it was the sound, the audio on your device there. So it just made very technical information even more more difficult to understand for lay people like us. But thank you so much.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No. Everything you said, I'm sure, was valuable. It was just.
Yeah, we couldn't understand what you were. Well, even if it was clear, we'd probably have a hard time. But the problem was the audio was not clear at all, so it made it incredibly difficult to understand what you were saying. So, but thank you so much for coming in, Andy, Paul. Thank you so much for that very thorough update. We are very delighted with the work that the staff is doing, and how well everything was handled during COVID, and how well prepared we are now to open on August 1st, thanks to all your efforts. We have our next item is a zoning text amendment for Secor Road, and Jaime will be, and Stuart, Corporation Counsel, and our Director of Planning will be taking us through the recommendations of the Planning Board and next steps for this zoning text amendment. So that's, I guess, Jaime, is this your presentation?
I think me and Stuart are playing chicken on who's going to go here.
Whatever you wish to do, Jaime, is fine with me. I'm happy to start if you want me to.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start, I think, and I'll fill in any details.
Thank you, folks. Good evening. Earlier, I sent to you the Planning Board's recommendation. You may recall that this involves a text amendment to the Station Plaza North District, and the request was that there be permission to have the text be changed to allow for residential on the first floor of those buildings. This was presented by Mr. Pedro Silva with regard to a project that he has presented. Although the project itself, we haven't really gotten any plans. There's been no application to the Planning Board for that. The letter from signed by Chair Michael Beldotti goes into the various aspects of the proposal, of the proposed text amendment. The Planning Board, and I'll just go through these, they thought that the text amendment was overly broad. They did not believe it should extend to the end parcels on Barlow Lane and Main Street, but only the parcels mid-block, and only with regard to those buildings that front onto Secor Road. And they thought that that was important because, again, they did want to continue to emphasize the ability to have a commercial development. They also wanted it to be made clear that this would require a conditional use permit as authorized by the Planning Board, that it would not be as of right to have residential at that location. They still want to foster ground floor commercial, which is consistent with the 2009 comprehensive plan. I should just say as an aside that this letter was forwarded to BFJ, the consultants working on the comprehensive plan, for any comments that they may have. The board also, the Planning Board also made a suggestion or recommendation that if the Board of Trustees is inclined to adopt the text amendment, that the board may want to consider whether the amendment should be applied within other places in the district where first floor commercial is difficult, essentially places that are similarly impacted by a steep topography. The planning board also again made further references to the 2009 comprehensive plan, which talked about one suggestion was to make Secor Road a one-way street heading eastbound away from the train station and towards downtown. And there's a question as to whether or not the proposed text change and allowing additional residential on Secor Road would make those traffic changes appropriate if to be implemented. And one of the important suggestions from the planning board deals with the seeker process. It is important, a term that you may hear bandied about is called segmentation. Segmentation as relates to seeker is a big no-no. You do not want to consider projects independently of other things because that creates problems in terms of the entire review process. So one of the suggestions that was made by the planning board is that the board may want to consider doing the environmental review for both the text amendment and with regard to a potential site plan together, somewhat similar to other projects that the board has had. There would have to be a declaration of lead agency status, or at least in this case, an intention to be as lead agencies, to be lead agency under the village code. For a change in the zoning code, the Board of Trustees would be the lead agency. And for site plan, it is generally the planning board, but you would probably want to have just one lead agency handling everything in this particular matter. But there would have to be a lead agency. There would have to be a determination of significance depending on what the classification is. Although I can tell you it would not be a type 2 action, which would be categorically exempt from seeker. It would either be a type 1 or an unlisted action. And as we've discussed with the text amendment for wetlands, depending on what is your determination as to significance, whether there's going to be a negative significant adverse environmental impact, that would determine if there would have to be an environmental impact statement with regard to the proposed text amendment, and potentially then with regard to the proposed development, that is being requested here. I should point out that the planning board did get this back to us. They were given extensions of time by the applicant to get the recommendation letter back to the Board of Trustees. The code does not impose on the Board of Trustees a time limit as to when it must conduct the public hearing with regard to a text amendment. Simply, it requires when the public hearing in terms of how much notice is to be given. But since there are steps that the board would have to take as relate to lead agency and whether or not it also wishes to be lead agency with regard to the project itself, those remain to be seen and those remain outstanding. And I would certainly say to the board that there should not be any public hearing until we get through the seeker process. And that's something that has to be dealt with. I have advised both the applicant's counsel and the applicant's architect of the need for the seeker review. And that communication was last week. I've not heard back since. So Jaime, any of the blanks, please fill in.
Yeah, so I think the overall concept that was being proposed by the applicant was a zoning code text amendment that was pretty narrow in that it would allow residential development on the ground floor on Seeker Road specifically. And so some of the problems that the planning board identified were problems that are similarly being found throughout the comprehensive plan process in the VC district and in some of the sort of adjacent areas that have similar concerns. So the way that the code has been written up to this point for that district, as well as the VC district, is that you are required to put ground floor retail, which is not always the most economically advantageous for specific properties. There are certain areas where the zone has been applied that it may not be financially feasible, and would thus result in either properties being forced to get a sort of a use variance, to get a zoning code text amendment, and it's not really the best, most appropriate method of planning districts. And so one of the things that has been presented by BFJ, and we're going to be looking into it more as part of one of these trainings, is the form-based zone. And so one of the nice things about form-based zones is they're built off of, at the bottom of, they have regulating plans that sort of say on these streets you want these types of uses, on other streets you want to sort of contribute different types of uses, but there's a general theme of the zone that passes through all those areas, and it also builds in some flexibilities so that there are certain areas where you have to have retail. There are certain areas where you would encourage retail if it works, but would allow residential as of right. And there are other areas where you would sort of discourage retail, but you still want the same sort of scale and character in that district. And so BFJ's kind of quick response was that, let's look at the other stuff that's going on in that area a little more comprehensively. And so I think, their comment was, it may make sense to proceed a little slowly with this particular block, since it is being looked at right now as part of the comprehensive plan, rather than moving forward with some zoning code text amendment that, quite possibly might be sort of like a square peg in a round hole, or might be something that is useful in other districts that can be applied in a similar fashion in a more thoughtful process. So.
Yeah, it sounds like if we are considering moving forward with, let's just say we decided to move forward with form-based code in that area, up and down Secor, as well as some of the adjacent downtown or some version of it, the waterfront, or however this unfolds. If we actually did move forward with form-based zoning there, then this question is obsolete, isn't it?
It is, yeah, potentially. If we're looking at changing the code, it'd be sort of like we're making a patch now, and it would be very shortly useless.
The same questions would be asked as far as what type of development do you want to see there. But if we were to update the code as it exists right now, the Euclidean code that we use for our all of our zoning regulations in the village today, we would go through this whole effort of doing a secret process and updating the code and changing the code, and then potentially just the code is irrelevant because now we have form-based zoning on that street and in some other some parts of our more densely built districts, right? So that is
100% correct.
Okay, great. So then I think it's very fortunate that there's not a clock ticking on how quickly the village board needs to respond now that we've gotten this this insight from the planning board. But I will also say the questions that the planning board raises as far as what we want to consider here or elsewhere are still the questions that we need to be asking ourselves with however we move forward, whether we do form-based zoning or whether we do just an updated code for the same approach that we have today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the questions about whether or not this is appropriate in other places, one of the points they talked about is maybe it makes more sense to have retail on the ends of the block and allow residential in the middle of the block, and that gets to the sort of the concept of a regulating plan that governs where you want to encourage, retail versus where you would be willing to allow it. There was one comment that they made, which was about making it a conditional use for residential, and BFJ thought that might not be the best approach. If you had a regulating plan that sort of governed what you were looking for, you would say, all right, we'll allow it as of right, but creating sort of encouragement and discouragement, and sort of make the decision early on where you want it to work. Adding the conditional use sort of just adds another layer of a process that may not be what the village is looking for. Maybe the village does like the idea and they want to go ahead, and we don't need to sort of slow it down with an additional step. for a conditional use permit.
Others have questions or comments on anything that we got here from the planning board or the process and next steps?
Yes. So Stuart, take me through, and I guess Jaime, take me through the scenario. Let's say the board agrees that we want to make the changes on this particular case. How long does it take to do a process like this? Just humor me. I know I haven't, yeah, but just for argument's sakes, we have a public meeting. Just give me a frame time and how long would this take?
You want to take a shot, or do you want me to take a shot, Stuart?
If you're asking Trustee Quezada how long the review process would take, you'd have to, it would be most likely months, to be honest, because you're going to have, because keep in mind, when you're doing a text change, even though and assuming that they also, it's done in line with their site plan, the text change has to involve, you have to consider it in terms of the entire zone that's involved or zones that are involved. So they have to go through all of that. They'd have to do an environmental assessment form. It may have to be a long form, which has its 3 parts. You know, and then you would still have to have your determination of significance. And depending on significance, because you could find that there is an adverse environmental impact here by what they propose to do, that could then require an environmental impact statement, an EIS, which would push the system that much further out. You cannot look to approve the text change and frankly the site plan until you get to all, you know, you cross all those T's on the environmental aspect of it. So it would likely be months at a minimum, to be honest.
I think that, okay. I think one thing to keep in mind also is that from a planning perspective, you put yourself on safer footing when you don't make revisions to the zoning code that only affect a very sort of small site. And so the proposed text amendment is so narrow that it only applies to one street on one block. And so it creates a lot of questions about why you're deciding to effectively rezone a single site. If you go about this in a process that's done as part of the comprehensive plan, it becomes part of a larger process, which I think, you know, makes it a little, you know, obviously it'll take longer to go through that process, but it makes it, I think, a little less, you know, odd to do it that way. It's not like we're creating a floating zone that exists in multiple districts. It's written, you know, for Seeker Road from this point to this point. It's a very narrow text amendment.
Correct. And you know, just to point of clarification, the particular applicant went through this process because we had actually said that you know, to go through this process and see what happens, because there's a bigger picture on this whole project. Sure. So having that conversation with Stuart last week, and this this particular item came up. One of my suggestion it was at that time was, you know, not thinking about the whole entire comp plan and the design itself. If we didn't have that going on right now, my suggestion to the board will be, why not have the 2 options and have, like Jaime explained in one of the comments, where maybe not a conditional use, but have the planning board review the process and see what the impediments are and go by case. And some sites maybe make sense to have residential, and some sites make sense to have the retail or the commercial portion. Going through the motions that we are going through right now, and knowing the level of homework that we have to do in regards to of this particular case, that, you know, trying to make a change on the zoning, I know it takes months. To me right now, and we can hold that, you know, if after we get through all that process, we still have public comments that we need to go through. You know, so it's a lengthy process to change that. I remember when we did when we modified the T-zone a little bit of that, and that was a couple months, you know, just to change the language and some of the stuff that it was done in there. My recommendation is right now we should wait. You know, we could definitely, there's a lot of things going on right now. Obviously, we're going to be learning more about form-based code within a month and a half. I think it's essential for us to understand what that looks like and what that means for us to make a smart, you know, decision and how do we move forward with this. That's my recommendation right now.
I agree with Trustee Quesada. I appreciate the work the planning board did. I actually agreed with a lot of what they said. But because we're not because we're in the process of a larger picture, and I need to understand how this all fits. I also see that going forward, we're going to have this discussion, a few of these discussions, because when you're in the process, in the middle of, or in the beginning of a comprehensive plan, this is what happens. You're sort of ending sort of the life cycle of one plan, of the plan of 2009, which developers are looking at and saying, I'm conforming with it, or I want to change to it, and you're birthing another one. It's like we're right in the midst of that changeover. So we'll probably get this question a couple of times about changes, but I'm in support of what Manny has just laid out and articulated, and so I don't think we're going to approve. I'm not in support of approving the request, and I think the request is for a change of text.
Trustee Levin, we're not at that point yet. So this was their recommendation. You would still have to hold a public hearing. You have a lot to do. So I understand. No, but I think saying on the record that you don't want to do that, I think that is premature.
Thank you, Stuart. I got it. I'm a little bit ahead of myself, is what you're saying. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Trustees Fritchie or Lopez, did you want to weigh in on this, or are you comfortable with holding off, as those of us who have spoken already have said, until we better understand the potential for form-based codes, and see if that's the path we'll take before we undertake the process any further with the in response to what we received so far from the planning board by considering any sort of text amendment change or embarking on that process? Are you okay with?
Yeah, I'm okay with this. We've got a lot of spoons in the soup here, so I just want to, you know, there's a lot going on. So I think to be more clear on where we want to go with this, if we even want to go with this, you know, I think we all need to be on the same page and understand exactly what we're going to do. So, yeah, I think we just need to keep, this is one discussion of probably many. And we don't have a time frame. That's a good thing.
Trustee Lopez, are you okay with this path of form-based code exploration?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I just want to, for anybody who's following along at home, this potential development on Secor Road is something that, I don't know, Manny, was there ever a time when we weren't having this conversation in some way in the last 8 or 9 years since you and I started this gig?
Yes.
So I just, this was brought to us by someone who owns property and wants to do a potential development, and it is appropriate for us to be responsive to the request, and we have done that initial step, but also that this consideration is something that has been ongoing for a number of years, and I think making sure that we get it right as part of this larger conversation that we're having about land use decision making and zoning is really the right path, and I'm glad that we all are seeing it that way. And I'm also glad that we have BFJ on board right now, and they're going to help us become you know, pseudo planners for a little while, so we can get up to speed and make some really thoughtful decisions. So thank you to BFJ for helping us with that. Obviously, Jaime is our in-house expert, and we're looking forward to going to planning school for at least a couple of hours in September. All right. Is there anything more that you need from us on that? Or I think everybody's been singing the same tune. We're good with that? Okay. Madam Manager.
Hey, thank you, Jaime and Stuart. The next item up is an administrative update from Steve Sage, our Personnel Director. Steve's here tonight to give an update on what's going on in our Personnel Department and the work that he's done, the tremendous work that he's done in getting us ready to open more fully now that we have seen a reprieve a bit of COVID in our community. So.
Thank you, Karen. And thank you for the board for having me. You know, as a personnel officer, there's a number of things that, you know, are sensitive in nature and I can't talk about, but I think I'm just going to focus on our response to COVID and the fact that we run a self-funded healthcare plan and all of the changes that are taking place in that vein. First, I guess to begin, we started off with a bunch of changes to how we cover COVID and what cost and cost sharing. We added a telemedicine benefit as well as some mental health related services. And more recently, we've worked on changes to COBRA, which are directed by the Department of Labor, as well as flex spending enrollment and how you can spend that money in your flex spending has all changed due to IRS guidelines. Healthcare enrollment is also changing due to those IRS guidelines. I'll be working with finance to put out an email to staff just notifying them of the changes so that they can get that started. But that's something that's been, you know, we've been working hand in glove with our TPA over the last couple of weeks to make sure that we're getting all that down so that we can institute it. As Karen mentioned, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be returning our workforce back to the office, what amounts to a 100% workforce. We've had this ability for a while since the governor's executive order that relates to public employment, but we've taken our time in making sure that we're doing all of the right things to properly introduce our staff back into the workforce, on top of providing PPE, masks, gloves, sanitizer. I think Andy mentioned it before about adding plexiglass to all our public counters. Our maintenance crew has been amazing. They're doing daily sanitizing of all of our facilities, all of our trucks, all of our vehicles. So it's been great to make sure that our employees are going to return to a safe environment. We're adding health screening stations to all of our buildings. Some of you guys who have been in 16 Croton have seen them. The governor makes this awfully challenging, considering he changes his travel list like every other couple of days, which, you know, sends our screeners in a tizzy. But I think that we're doing a really great job in order to make sure that, you know, our staff and the public coming into our building are protected. You know, part of what my office does too is that, you know, I jokingly call it disease detective work, but on a smaller scale for our workforce. When COVID hit, we had a lot of employees who were still reporting to work because of the essential nature of their job. And anytime somebody had an interaction that put them at risk at contracting the virus, you know, we were notified, and then, you know, we'd have to keep them out of the workforce. We'd have to send them for testing, and then we'd have to do this kind of tracking of everybody they've worked with and come in contact with and do notification to those employees. That had slowed down for a while, but I think that it has ramped up again in the last couple of weeks. So we've been devoting a lot of time to that, making sure that our employees are safe and getting tested and, you know, not putting them at risk at, you know, potentially spreading it to other coworkers. Outside of, and that's pretty much, you know, there's a lot of other smaller things in there, but that's pretty much COVID related. As we get to the back end of the year, we have a lot of contracts and services, and we'll be reviewing those and making sure that we're setting ourselves up properly for 2021. You know, prescription drugs, workers' comp, stop loss, legal counsel. These are all things that we should be reviewing on a yearly basis. And so we'll start to review all those contracts, which I guess originate out of my office. That was it.
Thank you. Well, I'll just start by saying I've had the opportunity to enter a couple of our buildings in recent weeks. 16 Croton, and in fact, I did have open office hours for the first time in several months this week, and did have one person come in and speak with me during open office hours, and we just kept our masks on and stayed at least 6 feet apart and just waved to each other, even though it's someone that I did know and I normally would have gotten within 6 feet of them. And that was the one occasion. Most of the time when people come into the building, they really don't. We're trying to keep them on the first floor. So one of the things that I'm hoping, and Steve and I ended up having a conversation earlier this week, sort of in an impromptu way, and I've spoken to a couple of the trustees about it, but I don't think I even got a chance to mention it to Karen. And I know that these conversations are being had, but is the way that we use our building going forward is going to be different than it has been in the past, even when we don't have to do temperature checks every time somebody enters the building, and a consideration of how to more effectively make use of the space that we have in 16 Croton Avenue, so that people who come into the building and have to pay bills or have to, pay their, taxes or interact with there's some departments have more public interaction than others, and can we find a way to consolidate them onto the first floor more than we have been? And so, Karen, good, I see that you're nodding your head, because it occurred to me that those are things that we should be including in our budget for 2021. And specifically, I'm just gonna also touch on something that's been mentioned at a couple of occasions today, is when we have public meetings again. We are tentatively planning to, at least the trustees that I've spoken with, to have our first public meeting that is not just virtual, the first week of September, which is September 2nd. At this point, it's probably not going to be at Village Hall, because we need someplace that's much bigger. I mean, the library is a very nice space. They may not be as able to accommodate us on the regular basis that we would need for ourselves and land use boards, but wherever it is, we're like a community center, that those are spaces that I think are probably going to be consider how to transform the board meeting rooms. I talked about how to maybe spread out more and be more versatile. But
sorry, Rika, would you mind muting? Thanks.
But I just want to point out that upgrades to the physical space in the board meeting room, as long as that is going to continue to be used for broadcasting, can be paid for with PEG money, which saves us money from the general fund. So as all of us are thinking about the expenses, because the last thing we want to do is spend more money on projects we weren't anticipating, but I think some of these are pretty important things that might be able to be done largely in-house, and where we can find other funds to spend to use rather than village property tax dollars, and we would always want to be doing that. And I just wanted to ask Steve, I haven't been to the Ops Center yet and experienced the series of questions and temperature taking and such, but I have at both the Rec Center and 16 Croton, and the process was a little different. They may have asked the same questions, but at 16 Croton, they just asked me, and then the woman at the desk wrote it down, whereas at the Rec Center, I was asked to sign and check boxes, and I just would question if that's a great idea, because I'm sure that like you get pens passed around and stuff, like just for consistency of process with the staff and the buildings.
That's not a great idea. I'll make some phone calls tomorrow.
I don't know. I just point that out. I know we're trying to figure out these processes.
I completely understand what you're saying. That shouldn't happen.
Okay, great. Then the other building that really impacts our ability to do enforcement and follow through on things as the world is reopening is the courts. And I know that's not directly in our purview, except that we do own the building. Do we know what the plan is for the courts reopening?
Maybe can I help with that? Because I've had some communication with the court. Initially, the court was of the opinion that, based upon an administrative order from the judge in White Plains, Judge Davidson, that they could not schedule any building code violation cases or vehicle and traffic law cases. That in fact is incorrect, but it is really a matter of the court determining what safety concerns they have and what they need. I have asked the judges what, if anything, the village can do to hasten getting the court open for our Tuesday code calendar, even if on a truncated basis. And I have not received a response back, except that if they need our help, they'll let us know. But we've heard nothing else. I do understand that they have scheduled some civil cases toward the very end of August, which is, I think, the first date. They do not have any landlord-tenant cases scheduled yet. And as I said, they have no building code calendar, no parking code. The court was under the impression they could not have any vehicle and traffic calendars. The court, the administrative judge in White Plains has advised that, in fact, vehicle and traffic tickets issued before June 1st could be heard by the court. I say could because, again, ultimately it is the court's determination. I did write to the judges earlier this week. I did have someone who had a large amount of parking tickets to pay, but unfortunately cannot register her car because it's a scofflaw. And the ordinary course is they would come to court, they'd negotiate with us, and we'd be done, and they would do it. The problem is, with the court not open, they can't negotiate. So they continue to get tickets for having an unregistered car. I did ask the judges for their opinion, as if there was anything that could be done. I have not heard back. I'll put it to you this way, Mayor. It's a little frustrating. We have now building code violations that go back to March. I have told the building staff today that they are to start issuing appearance tickets, and they will simply choose selected Tuesdays to make them returnable, similar to what the police are doing with parking tickets. The court is not yet assigning dates, and people will know that they may well be adjourned, but we have to get these matters moving. And so to that extent, if I can at least get it into court, then we can move from there. But what safety concerns the court has as to their ability to hear additional cases and when they're going to start, I honestly do not know. I've offered whatever assistance the village can provide to see what we can do, and I have not heard anything back. So that's unfortunately the best that I can tell you at this point.
Thanks for those inputs. That sounds frustrating.
Mayor, may I ask Stuart a question?
Of course.
Stuart, thank you for that update. Quick question. In general, do you know what other municipalities are doing in regards to the local courts, and if they are open, and if they are, do you know what kind of functions are they performing at this point? Is this we can simulate?
Trustee Kazad, I can answer you this way, and most of the information I have is from Steve Dewey, who is the town's prosecutor. Yorktown is open. Irvington is pretty much open. I believe that the city courts are open now, and there are other municipal courts that are open. But I can tell you for certain, Yorktown is fully operational. So it appears from what I heard from Mr. Dewey that the Justice Court here is somewhat behind the curve in terms of reopening. Again, I'm not sure what the situation is, but there are other courts that are open. But I will stress that when I spoke with the administrative judge's representative for village and town courts, she made it very clear that while the administrative order says what can open and what can be done, it ultimately rests with the local court. So if there is some sense in the local court here that they feel that they are unable to open for some reason, that I don't know what the answer is. It may be that they don't have someone who can take the temperatures at all times, or I don't know what the circumstance is. But if there are security concerns or safety concerns, I have asked the judges to please let me know. I would let you folks know, because as I said, we do want to get these cases moving along, both from the parking perspective, from the village code perspective, and vehicle and traffic law. We just want to move those cases. And hopefully we'll get some more guidance or more information from the Justice Court and the judges in the Justice Court. But as of yet, except for some communication last week, there's really been very little.
Thank you, Stuart.
Does anybody have more questions or comments for Steve or Stuart about the reopening of buildings or how it's going?
Sorry again. I just want to say thank you, Steve, for all the work that you've been doing. Is really appreciate that. All the coordination that you have to do. So thank you very much.
It is very kind. Thank you.
And just
Steve, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Steve, I just remembered I guess it's called a sexual harassment course or harassment. I don't know if it's only sexual that we have to go through. Is that an annual process, and does that have to get done within a certain period of time this year that it's planned for?
It is an annual process. It was made an annual process last year. I know that the village had scrambled to put it on during the end of the year. To be quite honest, I know that it's coming up. We've actually engaged our trainer in it.
Okay.
I don't have a real rock solid plan on how to get everybody in the room and do this, and considering the current situation.
Well, it just seems to me you'd be looking at an online system. If they're 1 hour long, I would avoid actually a large area. It seems to me while people are still actually at home, this would have been the right time to do it, even if they're still at home and working remotely, because it's probably pretty easy to do in your living room while we're paying people anyway. And so you may want to consider actually getting as much of that done, because I think it's my recollection is that it's coming up.
Yes, ma'am. That is correct. We actually talked last year about moving it to a technology platform, and one of the issues that we ran into is that a number of our workers don't have a home computer or technology to do it.
Right.
One of the things that we actually worked with last year was could we use the library? Is there a possibility there? I think that there are applications that you would be able to do that on the phone, and I think most people have a smartphone. I don't know if that's the greatest way in order to convey that kind of information.
Right, but where I work, what we did is we just set up a small room with laptops and told people they can just come sign up and use it, because surely there are enough computers in our buildings that for people that don't own one, they could do it by coming into an office for wherever they work or their supervisor's office. But you could also just set up a few, I think, for about a week or so and get it done that way, while people are still especially for distancing purposes, they can even make reservations, right? And just set it up somewhere. It's just something that has come across my desk today, and it just jogged my memory that I should ask you. But since you're presenting tonight and here you are, I don't even have to call you. Just an FYI.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, because I know last year was a little bit of a run to the end zone on it.
Yes, ma'am.
If we do move online, I'd love to have our land use boards and any other boards that are representing the village take it as well.
I'm sorry. I lost you there for a second.
So like we have zoning board of appeals, we have the planning board, like other boards that, and Stuart will know the exact language that I'm looking for, but it's like when there is a body that makes decisions representing the municipality. What is it called, Stuart? Do you remember this? Or Karen might actually know as well.
No, but what we're talking about basically, Trustee Lopez, are the land use boards that would be subject, let's call it, to the open meetings law. And in this case, Steve, that would be Zoning Board of Appeals, Planning Board, Environmental Advisory, and Historic Preservation. I believe what Trustee Lopez is saying is that if we went to some platform-based system, he would ask that the members of those boards and commissions similarly take the course.
Is that mandatable? Is that a word? Mandatable?
I got you.
The answer is yes. You can say that they've got, particularly if they can do it from a computer. So
Right.
the answer, we could count it as part of their training.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions about the reopening? Else first, Mr. Steve or Stuart?
I'm sorry. At some point, we talked about carrying the work sessions, continuing them virtually, even if we can go back to be together as much as I like being together. And is that something we have to vote on? Is that something that's mandated? Is that a policy decision? Can we just say that's what we want to do? Because I'd like to stay to the end of this year. I think during the work session, the presentations are cleaner and clearer. Public has actually, in my opinion, greater access to the information. Our staff can come in and go on the right times of the agenda rather than sitting there, and all the other benefits that, in my opinion, it has. So what would be the process to just do that? The legislative sessions being in a space together once we can get back together, but the work sessions to continue in this mode.
Trustee Levin, in the event that the suspension of the open meetings law basically sunsets, you will not be able to do the meetings remotely.
Even if we're not voting on it?
That is correct, Mayor. Subject to open meetings law, and open meetings law would not permit it.
Okay. So then we have to tentatively be ready to go on, right now we have the extension through the end of August, right?
No, you have the extension now through August the 5th. Correct.
That face said a lot.
So why did I think it was the end of August? Right,
Not for these. There are other executives that went through the 20th of August. These did not go through the end of August.
Okay. So then.
Well, then that means that wherever we're going has to be prepped in an appropriate way for us to be there and for the public to be there.
Correct.
If we, so as the buildings open, the buildings will be ready August 1st, so it won't be an issue. If we want to move to larger rooms, which would really mandate that we're in the community center, then there's issues with that we're working out now to be able to televise the meetings live, which we are doing now anyway, which I don't think are going to be a big deal to get ready by August 5th. So that would be, at some point it was talked about doing hybrid meetings, but we wouldn't be able to do that unless there was some sort of legislative change to open meetings laws. So
great.
I do want to point out you can still be at a distance when you're doing the meeting, meaning you could do it from your home or some other location, which is currently permitted under the open meetings law. The difference is that in that circumstance, you do have to advise the public where you are, and the public has the ability to come to that location to attend the meeting.
Right.
One of the
So by your
benefits.
definition, if it's in my house, the public has a right to come into my house.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
I
so
think we're going to err on
realistically, I don't
going
think
to
that
the
works.
community center because we'll be set up there and there'll be plenty of room for people to come in and sit 6 feet apart. I think that, you know, that probably is the best option if we want to facilitate the ability for public to come in. Otherwise, it would be hard to know whether or not we'd have enough space in at 16 Croton, or even courthouse is a little bit bigger, but you're still on the dais. There's not a lot of place for the board to spread out. So we're thinking that we're going to try to do the meetings in the community center.
So basically we have next week off. So we have 2 weeks to be ready to go. And our next legislative session, August 5th, unless the governor extends things further, but our next legislative session will be at the community center.
Feasibly, yes.
And one of the things that we haven't talked about in this forum, but I've spoken with a couple of trustees about, is to, at this point, to have something of a hybrid where we will be in person, people can come to us in person and speak to us in person, but that we would also have a screen available so that people who are not ready to leave their homes and have been enjoying the opportunity to weigh in from home might also be able to Zoom in and watch the meetings. So do we have a live feed at the community center so that it can be going out live?
We're looking to do a live feed the way we do typically. That would be televised. It wouldn't be, Zooming is going to be more problematic. We're not sure that we can accommodate that at the community center with everybody. We're not sure how that would work. So we're looking into that as well. But we would be able to do a GoTV like we've done historically.
Yeah, that's not streaming though. That's whatever. Okay, I'm sure you're working on it.
I mean, I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm just not sure how we're gonna.
No, I think it's complicated. I'm disappointed that we can't do the work sessions this way. I think it's much more open to the public and much more available and much easier actually for presentations. And much clearer sound-wise and everything-wise, and it's in real time. So very disappointing to be going back to the 1900s when one of the few silver linings from this coronavirus thing is the use of technology has been forced upon us, thank God. But now we're going to go back.
I agree with you on the work sessions. I'm just before our next legislative, but it sounds like we don't have much of a say.
Yeah, I thought we had a choice, but apparently we don't have a choice, which I think is really weird.
Just a matter of a work session. But for the legislative session, I do want us to sometime figure out how to have the Zoom capability for people or something equivalent that is as accessible, and we'll figure it out how to Zoom. And I know you're not saying that it's not possible, we just haven't figured it out, but I think it's something we can.
So the challenge with Zoom is it's a device activated thing. So I just don't know, you saw how difficult it was to see Paul and Andy in the same room on Zoom. So if you have that's going to be the challenge. If I don't know if you have everybody at their device who's Zooming simultaneously at the meeting in the same room, you're going to have audio issues. So I'm not sure what.
Yeah, what I'm saying is mostly for the people at home to be able to access us. It's really so that people to allow people to be able to weigh in the same way that
they'd be able to. We'll have to see, because maybe we'll have to look at I'm not 100% sure that it's as easy for this type of a meeting to do it. We'll have to see what the options are.
Okay, and thank you, Stuart, for staying so on top of the executive orders and keeping us as we're trying to navigate through the ever-changing regulations and dates. And if we have more time to stay in this format, then please let us know, because there are a lot of advantages to this format, I think, particularly for work sessions, as Rico was saying, but really also I think the ideal would be a hybrid of both for when we're trying to hear from the public. Some people are not ready to leave their home, and frankly, some people could never leave their home. And for them to be able to communicate with us this way is really ideal if we have both options. So let's try and figure that out if we can. Okay. More questions and comments other than thanking Stuart and Steve. Thank you so much for your update to us. I know you've really had a tremendous amount that you have taken on in this surprising world that none of us were anticipating, and you've been doing really terrific work. And we've also been so impressed with the work that you've done that we can't discuss here publicly. Your discretion, your thoughtfulness, your attentiveness have just been above and beyond, and I'm really, really grateful that you're here with us now. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Karen, is there anything more in this agenda, or are we motioning for exec?
Motioning for exec.
No, Mayor, there's a special meeting.
Oh, the special meeting, I forgot. I'm sorry. We have a special meeting. And
Need a motion to adjourn the work session and go into special meeting, please.
I completely forgot.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, turning my hat on here. I think we know that everyone's here, so I will not take attendance.
Wait a second. Are we still on the same? Don't we have to get off the Zoom to another one?
No, this is a special session, a legislative session. This is not exec.
Got it. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience, I don't know if there is, who would wish to address the board with regard to the one resolution on tonight?
There is no one waiting to comment.
Thank you. Okay. Resolved that the village manager is authorized to sign a claims services agreement with TriStar Risk Management Enterprise, Inc., 100 Ocean Gate, Suite 700, Long Beach, California, 90802 for a 3-year term commencing on September 15, 2020. And be it further resolved that the terms of the claims services agreement are detailed in the May 13, 2020 response to request for qualifications, claim management and adjustment services third-party administrator, as supplemented by correspondence dated July 13, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Clerk Kahan?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn to executive session for matters of, I know it's personnel, regarding specific persons, and I don't know if there's any other topics. Anyone else have anything else for exec? Nope. Is there a motion to adjourn to exec session?
So moved. Second.
Do you want to clarify anything, Karen, before we vote?
We were also going to discuss, well, I guess personnel. I guess it's issues of personnel.
All in favor?
Aye.
And with that, thank you very much. Next week is a 5th Wednesday, and we are not going to have a village board meeting. Yay, and the crowd goes wild. Thank you, Jaime, for recognizing that, how very special that is. And perhaps the next time we are all together, it may not be in a Zoom room. We may actually be in a physical room together somewhere in the village of Ossining, and we'll figure that out in time to get that all shared with you by the end of the week prior to the meeting, exactly where it's going to be taking place, if we are indeed in a room together. And thank you very much to everyone, all of our many special guests who helped us work so many. Be well.